Chapter 566. Since Pushun Nun said so, Xiao Yanru certainly wouldn't ask to see the painting again. She didn't see the painting with her private seal again. Unexpectedly, she saw a painting with Pushun Nun's private seal. It seemed that the painting was used differently for Pushun Nun. Since it was sent here, just put it aside. Xiao Yanru said casually. Shuqi answered and went to wash up. After washing up, Xiao Yanru went to see Xiao Wanru after breakfast, but was told that Xiao Wanru hadn't gotten up yet. She had no choice but to go back to her room and wait for a while. After waiting for a while, Xiao Yanru heard some sounds from the silence room. Xiao Yanru went over again. This time, Xiao Wanru had already gotten up. After washing up, she was eating porridge. Seeing Xiao Yanru come over, she warmly invited her to eat some. Xiao Yanru just shook her head with a smile and said that she had already eaten some. Xiao Wanru didn't eat much. After taking a few sips, she put it down. Yu Jie quietly cleaned up the breakfast. Fifth sister, this is the ointment I brought from the mansion. I heard that it was given by the Imperial palace. Your hand is injured, so is mine. I can use both of them. Look, I only used a little last night, but I recovered so quickly. Xiao Yanru said with a smile and reached out her hand. Her hand was scalded. It wasn't too serious, but because her skin was white and tender, it looked red and blistered. Yesterday, it looked a little scary, but today, it didn't seem to be a big problem. Although it was also red, the blisters didn't swell. It was just a little swollen. Xiao Yanru said, took a jade bottle from Shuqi, put it in front of Xiao Wanru, and said, Fifth sister, you can also use some. I don't need it. I've almost recovered. Xiao Wanru refused politely. In fact, there was no bleeding on her hand, but there were some small scratches and a suspicious bite mark, but she couldn't let others see it. So she wrapped her hand. When she got up just now, Yu Jie had already wrapped her hand with a handkerchief. There will be scars even if you have almost recovered. It is said that after you use this ointment, your skin will be as good as before and there will be no scars. Xiao Yanru introduced softly and pushed the jade bottle in front of Xiao Wanru. If that was the case, then it would be hard to refuse such kindness. Well, thank you, big sister. I'll ask Yu Jie to change the dressing for me in a while. She has just applied the dressing, so forget it. Xiao Wanru reached out to take the jade bottle with a smile. The sooner you use it, the better. Xiao Yanru said with an even gentler look. Thank you for your kindness, big sister. I know. I heard that big sister got a painting of Pushun Nun today. I wonder if I can have a look? Xiao Wanru smiled more warmly and changed the topic calmly. She really didn't dare to use the ointment sent by Xiao Yanru casually. This painting was entrusted to me by Pushun Nun before. It's not mine, so please forgive me, fifth sister. I'm afraid I can't show it to you for the time being. When I meet Pushun Nun in the future, I will definitely explain this matter. If Pushun Nun agrees, I will let fifth sister see it again, okay? Xiao Yanru's smile was very decent. She seemed to be in a dilemma but would stand up for Xiao Wanru. It was hard to believe that there was viciousness behind her beautiful face. Thank you, big sister. Xiao Wanru said insincerely. She reached out to pick up a scroll of scriptures beside her and said, Big sister, do you want to recite scriptures with me? This time, it was really a scripture. Xiao Yanru despised her in her heart. When she came here yesterday, she was reading a script, but today she took out a scripture seriously and said, I don't know how to recite scriptures very well. I'd better copy some Buddhist scriptures to offer later. However, I've been copying Buddhist scriptures on the mountain all the time, and sometimes I'm very tired. Fifth sister, do you have any good scripts to read? Scripts? How could I have any? There are only scriptures and scriptures. Xiao Wanru took a wooden fish handed over by Yu Jie, tapped it gently, looked up at Xiao Yanru, and said with a straight face, Big sister, you must be joking. I'm being reckless. I thought I should read these when I'm bored on the mountain. If you really don't have any, I'll go to copy Buddhist scriptures. Xiao Yanru naturally didn't believe Xiao Wanru's words, but she didn't show it on her face, as if she would believe whatever Xiao Wanru said. She didn't even feel that Xiao Wanru's attitude became cold because of her question. She glanced at the silence room and found that there were really not many things in it. There were a few books on the desk by the window which looked like scriptures, but she didn't know what was in the drawer under the desk. She couldn't tell what was in it at the moment, but she guessed that there must be scripts in it. That was good. The more things Xiao Wanru had, the better. If there weren't any, she wanted to send some here. When she glanced back, she looked at the locked box in the corner. The box was not big and placed in the corner, so no one would notice it at ordinary times. At this moment, there were some writing brushes and inkstones placed casually on it, so it seemed that no one would touch it. She was very satisfied with it. After leaving Xiao Wanru's room, she stood in the corridor and thought for a while. Then she said to Shichi, "Let's go to the nunnery and ask for some Buddhist scriptures." "Yes, miss." Shichi answered, and the master and the servant left slowly one after another. She didn't want to stay here and listen to Xiao Wanru's monotonous sound of the wooden fish, which was not only boring but also uncomfortable. Asked Qing to follow them. Xiao Wanru had already knocked the wooden fish in her hand, but she also heard Xiao Yanru's words at the door and gave an order to Yu Jie beside her. Then she became serious and began to chant the scriptures in a low voice. When Yu Jie came out, Xiao Yanru and the servant had already left the courtyard. She whispered Xiao Wanru's words to Qing in the courtyard. Her answered, put down the broom in her hand, and followed them out of the courtyard. Xiao Yanru went to the back mountain casually. The scenery at the back mountain was much better than that in the front yard. She liked to paint at the back mountain in the future. It was autumn now, and the scenery in autumn was a little different from the red leaves all over the mountain. The red leaves were mixed with green leaves, and some summer flowers were in full bloom. With the wind blowing, the heat of summer had faded, which made people feel inexplicably relaxed and comfortable. "Miss, someone is painting here." Shuchi suddenly pointed to a place in front of them and said, "A man was painting with his back to them." It was really surprising that a man could come in such a place. In the past, few men came here, and even some female pilgrims seldom came here. The nuns would point them to several other places with excellent scenery. Although they were all in the back mountain, it was a little far from here. After all, it was too close to the other side of the high wall. It was a serious crime to disturb the cultivation of the former emperoress. Since there was a man here, Xiao Yanru couldn't go forward, so she chose a path on the side leading to the top. The path was not big, but the scenery was excellent, and Xiao Yanru was in a good mood. There was a huge stone in front of her. Xiao Yanru was about to turn around the huge stone when she suddenly saw a person turn around behind the huge stone. "First, Miss Xiao." The woman who turned around bowed to Xiao Yanru respectfully. "Miss Mo?" Xiao Yanru recognized the person in front of her. She was Mo Chioi, who lived not far away. They had met in Pushun Nun's place in the past. It seemed that Miss Mo was a distant relative of Pushun Nun and lived in the Yuhui nunnery because of Pushun Nun. However, few people in the nunnery knew about it, and they all thought that she was a relative of Pushun Nun's disciple. Xiao Yanru knew it because Pushun Nun told her frankly. "First, Miss Xiao, does Pushun Nun leave any paintings? I left the mountain before and came here today. I didn't see Pushun Nun. I heard that you were here, so I specially came to ask about her. I was going to go to the courtyard, but I didn't expect to meet you here," Mo Chioi said happily. Xiao Yanru looked at Mo Chioi and the two maids behind Mo Chioi, and her eyes darkened a little. In the past, Mo Chioi, like Xiao Wanru on the mountain, was dressed in a simple black robe without any distinguishing features. Although Mo Chioi was also good-looking, she was not outstanding in Xiao Yanru's eyes. Today, Mo Chioi, who had changed her clothes into a light pink dress and put on some light makeup, looked like a completely different person from before. At first glance, she still looked the same, but after a closer look, she seemed to be a completely different person. Not only did she look much more beautiful than before, but her aura also seemed to be different. Together with the two maids behind her, no matter how she looked at it, she seemed to be the young ladies from aristocratic families who used to play with her. "Miss Why are you dressed like this?" Xiao Yanru said in surprise. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would really think that the two of them were not the same person. "I found my biological uncle. My uncle and aunt asked me to go down the mountain to their mansion. Thinking of Pushun Nun's care for me in the past, they specially prepared a gift for me. I didn't expect that Pushun Nun was not here. She said that she would draw a 1,000-hand guanyin painting for me, but I don't know whether it is in the hands of the first Miss Xiao. Mo Chiui changed the topic and asked with a soft smile. Yes, there is one, but I don't know whether it was given to you by Pushun Nun or not. She left in a hurry, so she directly sent the painting to me without meeting me. Xiao Yanru said vaguely. Pushun Nun did not say that she would give her the painting. The painting came suddenly, so she actually wondered whether it was sent by someone else. However, it didn't seem to be sent by Pushun Nun when she saw the private seal of Pushun Nun. Hearing Mo Chiui's words, it seemed to be the case. It must be. She said that she would draw it like this, and it was just a sketch at that time. Hearing that it was really in the hands of Xiao Yanru, Mo Chiui breathed a sigh of relief, took out a very simple sketch from her bosom and said. Xiao Yanru reached out to take it. It was very simple with only a few strokes, but she could tell that it should be the same as the one in her hand. She nodded at once and said with a smile, "It is indeed like this. In this case, come with me. I will give you the painting." First miss, I lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time, but my uncle and aunt thought that I should not live in the nunnery since I had my own uncle, so they don't want others to talk about my past. I hope that you can ask your maid to go there, lest the nuns in the nunnery see me and make my uncle and aunt unhappy with more rumors. Chapter 567. If a miss from an aristocratic family entered the nunnery to observe filial piety like Xiao Wanru, her reputation would be excellent and she would be respected. However, if a miss had to live in the nunnery because her family was poor and she had no relatives to rely on, even if her relatives found her, her reputation would be bad. Some people would even doubt whether her family education was bad. If Mo Chiui's uncle and aunt were worried about this and didn't want Mo Chiui to appear in front of the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery, it was reasonable. Shuqi, go and get the painting. Xiao Yanru handed the sketch in her hand back to Mo Chiui and ordered Shuqi softly. Miss, there is no one else here after I leave. Shuqi looked at Mo Chiui and the two maids behind her and said warily. First miss, can you let my maid go with your maid? Mo Chiui said with a smile. Okay. Xiao Yanru said with a smile and then said to Shuqi, it doesn't matter. I haven't seen you for a long time. Let's take this opportunity to chat. Hearing her first miss say so, Shuqi had no choice but to leave in a hurry. Mo Chiui waved her hand and a maid followed her. Miss Mo, who is your uncle? Where does he work? Xiao Yanru looked at Mo Chiui curiously and said, if I didn't have a predestined relationship with you in the Yuhui nunnery, I'm afraid that I couldn't recognize you. My uncle is just a lowly official. He is nothing in your eyes, but he is my only closest relative in the world. Fortunately, I have him. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I can't go down the mountain in my life and can only spend the rest of my life in the Yuhui nunnery. Mo Chiui smiled bitterly and looked up at the scenery in front of her. They were in a high position now, so they could see most of the scenery of the Yuhui nunnery. Miss Mo, now the bitterness has come to an end. What happened in the Yuhui nunnery is just an experience. There is no sweetness without wind and rain. What do you think, Miss Mo? Xiao Yanru said gently with an increasingly elegant smile and comforted her. Mo Chiui turned her head, looked at Xiao Yanru's gentle and dignified smile, and felt grateful in her heart. She bowed deeply to Xiao Yanru and said, First Miss Xiao, thank you for your comfort. Although she was the daughter of an official now, there was still a big gap between her and Duke Xing's mansion. Mo Chiui was very moved that Xiao Yanru treated her so kindly and even tried to comfort her. Since she went to her uncle's mansion, although an etiquette instructor had taught her again, her situation was not good. Her uncle also had children. Although he really took good care of her, her cousins were not easy to deal with. They always thought of various reasons to humiliate her. Xiao Yanru, on the other hand, moved her a little. It doesn't matter whether I comfort you or not. I just see that you are a little sad. If I go to the foot of the mountain someday, you can come to me if you have nothing to do. Xiao Yanru became increasingly gentle and said with a soft smile. This meant that she wanted to befriend Mo Chiui. With her status, befriending a woman from a small official's mansion was really too much for Mo Chiui. First Miss Xiao, thank you. Mo Chioi expressed her gratitude again and deeply regretted that she didn't befriend Xiao Yenru on the mountain at that time. If they had befriended each other earlier, it would have been a good thing for her. One of them intended to befriend Xiao Yenru, while the other smiled eagerly and talked happily. After a while, Shuchi came with the painting. Mo Chioi took it, looked at it carefully, and was overjoyed. She expressed her gratitude to Xiao Yenru again and then went down the mountain with the two maids. Xiao Yenru stood on the mountain and watched them leave, and the smile on her face slowly faded. "Miss, why did you give the painting to her?" Pushun Nun didn't explicitly say that it was not for you. Shuchi felt indignant for her master and said, Pushun Nun's painting could not be obtained easily. Since it was sent to her master, why couldn't it be for her master? Moreover, it was a painting with a private seal. As Xiao Yenru's personal maid, Shuchi naturally knew that her master didn't have a painting with Pushun Nun's private seal in her hands. Why did she give it to her master? Did the maid do anything unusual after she went with you? Xiao Yenru said lightly without looking back. She kept asking about the 5th Mississippi. It seemed that she didn't go with me to get the painting, but for the 5th Mississippi. After entering the courtyard, she even took the initiative to stay in the courtyard and looked around. At first glance, I could tell that she was up to no good. I found her very eye-catching, Shuchi said angrily. It was fine that this servant girl inquired about the 5th Miss on the way, but she also looked around outside the 5th Miss Silence room. She didn't look like the principal servant girl of the 5th Miss at all. Even an inferior servant girl was a bit smarter. Have you said everything you should say? Xiao Yenru raised the corner of her mouth with a sneer. I've said everything you want. Miss, don't you think it's very strange? No one has paid attention to her for so many years. She has lived here for 5 years. Suddenly, her biological uncle popped up and was willing to raise her. Why didn't he bring her here earlier? It's really unreasonable for him to bring her here now instead of bringing her here earlier. Shuchi said suspiciously. Do you also think it's suspicious? Xiao Yenru walked back slowly. It was almost time for her to go back. Shuchi followed her closely and nodded. I do think it's suspicious. Since it has nothing to do with us, we don't have to ask about it. Just wait and see. It's a good interest to be interested in the 5th sister. Let's wait and see. If they can fight with each other until they die, it has nothing to do with me, Xiao Yenru said casually. First miss, is there anything wrong with Pushun Nun? Shuchi's heart skipped a beat and her face turned a little pale. Pushun Nun had a special relationship with her 1st Mississippi. If there was something wrong with Pushun Nun, her 1st miss would be implicated. No matter what, it has nothing to do with us. I just want to learn painting. Xiao Yenru said meaningfully. She glanced at the high wall below, which was not high from the inside. She could also see the courtyards behind the high wall. There were really a lot of S of the former emperor. Seeing Xiao Yenru turn in that direction, Shuchi also turned her eyes and sighed. The S who have no children are really pitiful. Xiao Yenru turned her cold eyes back and continued to look at it. Having no children in the imperial harem meant that one would become a stepping stone for others, and she would also enter the imperial harem. But there was one thing she was sure of, that was, the path she was going to take was different from that of the people below. She was destined to step on all kinds of stepping stones to reach the highest position. Miss, I saw Miss Mo, who lived over there before. It said that she has lived there for 5 years. She dressed completely differently, but I recognized her at a glance. She and the 1st miss were talking happily. Because there was no one over there, I didn't dare to get close and couldn't hear what they were talking about. But they were very happy. After that, Shuchi brought back a painting scroll with Miss Mo's maid. Qin reported to Xiao Wanru. She came back after Xiao Yenru, but she was an inferior servant. The servant girl was the most inconspicuous one in the entire courtyard, and she was agile. Even if she followed Xiao Yenru, Qin wouldn't notice her. Miss Mo? The Miss Mo who begged my grandma before? Xiao Wanru's face slowly darkened. She rolled her watery eyes and put down the wooden fish in her hand. Yes, that's her. She didn't look like the peasant girl on the mountain at that time. She was dressed like a miss, followed by 2 servant girls. She left after taking the painting scroll, Qing'er said. Xiao Wanru fell silent. She always felt that it was not simple and it was not just a matter of a painting scroll. That painting scroll is the one that Pushun Nun intended to give to Xiao Yanru. Not long after Xiao Yanru got it, it was taken away by someone. Xiao Yanru gave it to her without saying anything and even talked happily with her? Xiao Wanru whispered softly. When Shuqi came to take the painting, Yujia had already seen it and reported it to Xiao Wanru. Miss, Pushun Nun didn't intend to give the painting to the first miss, but to Miss Mo. However, at that time, Prince's men had appeared, so it was inconvenient for Pushun Nun to give it to Miss Mo directly, so she asked the first miss to do it. Qing'er rolled her eyes and strung together a series of strange things. However, after saying this, she felt that it was impossible. It seemed that it should not be strung together in this way. Pushun Nun's painting was not shameful, and she could have asked other nuns to leave it for Mo Chioi. Why did she go to such a big circle? Moreover, the first miss looked very surprised, so she didn't ask Shuqi to take the painting scroll in advance. She was far away at that time, but she still saw that Mo Chioi seemed to show something to Xiao Yanru, and then Xiao Yanru agreed to let Shuqi take the painting scroll. Was there any proof in it? It was just a painting. Did it need so much proof? The painting should be given to Mo Chioi. As for why she asked Xiao Yanru for it, it might be because His Highness was there, or she didn't want His Highness to notice the painting or the person. Of course, there might be other reasons. In short, she didn't want others to notice her. Qing'er, ask someone to keep an eye on Mo Chioi and see if there's anything strange about her. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and gave an order. She always felt that Mo Chioi was very strange. She had thought that Mo Chioi had secretly gone down the mountain and had nothing to do with what happened after that. However, it was obvious that she was wrong. Seeing that Mo Chioi's maid kept looking at her in the yard and even wanted to sneak over to have a look, she knew that Mo Chioi was paying attention to her. No matter what Mo Chioi's current identity was, it had nothing to do with her. How could Mo Chioi pay so much attention to her when she came to get the painting? In the past, they didn't have much contact. At most, Mo Chioi bowed to her when they met, and she just nodded with a smile. Why did Mo Chioi suddenly pay so much attention to her? Thinking of the matter that Mo Chioi knelt down to beg her grandma that day, she felt that there was something fishy about it. Yes, Mississippi. I'll do it in a minute, Qing'er answered. Chapter 568. Qing'er, who was about to turn around and leave, stopped. Yujia, why do you say so? Xiao Wanru tilted her head and asked with a smile. I think. Recalling what had happened yesterday, Yujia chose her words carefully. That woman fell down and then rushed over with a lot of people. If they really caught us, they would definitely beat us up. At that time, no one would care about the paintings. Even if the 2 paintings were lost, Miss would not be able to do anything when she saw us being beaten like this. Besides, I also asked the people of the Yuhui nunnery after that, and they all said that no one made a scene. If the 2 paintings were taken away at that time, would they not be able to find them? That place was remote and no one saw it. Even if something happened, as long as others didn't say it, no one would know. In fact, Yujia didn't have any real evidence. If it weren't for Qing'er's words just now, she couldn't even think of such a possibility. He couldn't think of such a possibility, but he felt that this matter was very mysterious. The overly arrogant Miss rushed out and didn't protect her master first. Instead, she chased after her and Chu Li's servants and later asked about the trace. It was very mysterious. She felt that it was the case, but she didn't have any real evidence, which made her feel very depressed. If they did it for the paintings, why did they do it? Pushun Nun originally intended to give the paintings to First Mississippi. She could have asked First Miss for them directly. Why did they make such a scene? Qing'er asked in confusion. Could it be that they thought that the painting had been taken by Miss and was going to be sent down the mountain, so they were anxious and used this method? Yujia said. After saying that, she felt that even she didn't believe it herself. However, Xiao Wanru fell silent. She stood up, walked to the window, took out the copied painting from the painting jar beside her, unfolded it on the table and looked at it carefully. She frowned slightly. She had looked at it for a long time yesterday, but she didn't find anything wrong with it. But the current situation really showed that there was something wrong with the painting, and the problem was not small. Let's go out for a walk. Let's go to the place where you and Chu Lu met yesterday. After looking at it for a long time, Xiao Wanru, who still found nothing, put down the painting and said, she couldn't find anything wrong in a short time, so she could only put it aside for now. Yes, miss. Yu Jia nodded and followed Xiao Wanru out of the door. There was still no one in this remote place. The conflict yesterday made Yu Jia feel like she was in a dream. There was no trace of it here. They went to the small Buddhist hall at the back to have a look. They walked around the altar several times but found nothing unusual. Everything was normal, as if Yu Jia's guess was false. However, Xiao Wanru felt that there was an invisible thread in it, but she couldn't find it at the moment. After going back, after thinking for a while, she asked Yu Jia to take the painting with her and go down the mountain to tell Chu Luchen about what she and Chu Lu had encountered, as well as what Qin had seen about Xiao Yenru. She also left the painting with him. Chu Lu happened to come back at this time. Yu Jia obeyed and went down the mountain in a carriage. Miss, I came back late because I heard something on the street and specially inquired about it, so I came back late. Chu Lu also took some things that Great Elder Princess asked her to bring up the mountain for Xiao Wanru. After putting them down, she was so tired that she was panting. Qin handed her a handkerchief. She took it and wiped her face. What's the news? Xiao Wanru asked. The matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple has been figured out. I heard that it is a big deal. The whole capital city is in an uproar. Some families who specially invited Taoist Xiushui to their mansions are in an uproar. The Baiyun Taoist temple has also rescued many women who were locked up, some of whom have been locked up for several years. Chu Lu took a breath and said, the shock this time was really great. Not only ordinary people but also big aristocratic families were shocked. The misses and madams of aristocratic families were the most distinguished. They usually stayed in the backyard and rarely went to the front yard. Ordinary people couldn't see them at all. However, it was said that Taoist Xiushui had a good relationship with several madams. Their mansions must be in an uproar. How about Duke Xing's mansion? This result was also expected. Unexpectedly, when Shichi's investigation was so fast and the matter was solved in this way. It was clean and tidy without any hesitation. Moreover, he directly exposed the case mercilessly. In his previous life, although this case was also uncovered, it wasn't this fast, nor was it this clean. In comparison, some of the public opinion had already been secretly blocked, or some of the big aristocratic families that were related to this case had already distanced themselves from it. The faster it was solved, the less likely it was to be tampered with. Of course, on the one hand, it was because of Wen Shichi's intelligence. On the other hand, it was because of Wen Shichi's identity. Even if his identity revealed something, others could not do anything to him. Although he was a rising noble who was valued by the emperor, his identity as the prime minister also made all forces very afraid. I heard that this matter broke out from Duke Xing's mansion. It is said that this evil Taoist Xiushui deceived the public and wanted to say that the fifth miss is an evildoer. I don't know who in Duke Xing's mansion secretly plotted with him. He smeared honey on the fifth miss's bracelets and longevity lock, which made the ants in the Yuhui nunnery climb up. The ants on the mountain are bigger than those at the foot of the mountain, which looks very creepy. He wanted to send the fifth miss to the Baiyun Taoist temple. Chu Lu said, she went down the mountain last night and stayed at the foot of the mountain for a night. Originally, she was going to go up the mountain early in the morning today. When she got out of the princess's mansion and heard people talking about this matter on the street, she immediately stopped the carriage, found a tea house, and sat inside to listen to gossip. Miss, everyone is guessing that it was done by old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion or Madam of Duke Xing. Some people say that it was done by third Madam of the mansion or other misses. Anyway, it is very unpleasant to hear. It is said that the evil Taoist Xiushui seduced a master in the mansion with his charm, and then there was such a show. Seduced by a man? Xiao Wanru showed a smile on her face. What he said made people think of many things. The evil Taoist Xiushui of the Baiyun Taoist temple was a man. If it was said that a man was seduced by a man who in Duke Xing's mansion would be suspected of wearing a green hat. No matter which family this kind of thing happened, it would not be a good thing to hear. It seemed that Duke Xing's mansion had to deal with this matter. When Shichi made this matter so big and so fast, which could be regarded as a favor to her. I also heard that, Chu Lu said again, but she hesitated at this point. What's the matter? Xiao Wanru looked at her and asked in a good mood. I heard that among the families that are close to Baiyun Taoist Temple, there is Duke Yong's mansion. It is said that they are very close to Baiyun Taoist Temple. It has been like this for many years. Chu Lu stammered but still made it clear. How many years? Xiao Wanru was also stunned for a moment. Duke Yong's mansion had not appeared in her memory for a long time. It seemed that since Qin Yuru married there, she had not paid attention to what happened there. In that case, even if Qin Yuru married there, she would not have a good life. I heard that it has been more than 10 years. It seems that the master of the Baiyun Taoist Temple could gain a foothold in the capital city at the beginning because of Duke Yong's mansion, Chu Lu said. She heard that Duke Xing's mansion and Duke Yong's mansion were the most talked about. Duke Xing's mansion was the family in trouble now, while Duke Yong's mansion was the one that was most respected at the beginning. One of them was the beginning, while the other was the end. Compared with other aristocratic families, they were more easily criticized. Xiao Wanru was very surprised that this matter was related to Duke Yong's mansion. However, she did not pay attention to Duke Yong's mansion. After listening to it, she raised the corner of her mouth and said, "The matter of Duke Yong's mansion has nothing to do with us, and Qin Yuru will not get me involved. However, I'm afraid that Duke Xing's mansion will send someone to show goodwill later." "Miss, do we need to prepare anything?" Chu Lu asked. "You and Qing go down later and close the door of my silence room. Tell them that I won't come out until I finish reading and copying the 3 volumes of scriptures today. I'm observing filial piety from my parents, so I can't be interrupted at will. If someone from Duke Xing's mansion comes, just use this excuse to refuse." Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said. She did not want to see the people from Duke Xing's mansion at this moment, and she was even more unwilling to explain the matter of Duke Xing's mansion to others. She had to let the people from Duke Xing's mansion know that she was cultivating in seclusion and should not disturb her if there was nothing important. She had been on the mountain for so many years, and Duke Xing's mansion had been indifferent to her, as if she did not exist. Now she was involved in one thing after another. "Yes, I know." Chu Lu nodded and hurried down with Qing. Qing continued to clean and tidy up the courtyard, while Chu Lu went to the wing room to get the embroidery shed and leisurely embroidery. Miss had said that they were not the ones who were anxious now. The people from Duke Xing's mansion came quickly. Chu Lu had only gone in to embroider a flower when she heard a noise coming from outside. Looking out of the window, she found that it was really a big scene. Duke Xing's mansion actually sent 4 servant girls with Nanny Xing. They were sent by Madam of Duke Xing. "Is the 5th miss inside?" Nanny Xing asked with a smile, and her attitude was extremely amiable. Looked at her blankly, and then looked at the 4 servant girls holding gift boxes behind her. After a long while, she said, "Our 5th miss is practicing in seclusion for heir of Duke Xing and Infanta. She is chanting scriptures and copying Buddhist chants inside. No one can disturb her. Madam sent me to bring some food to the 5th Mississippi. I won't disturb her for long," Nanny Xing said with a smile. "No, the 5th miss has ordered that no one can disturb her no matter who comes. Otherwise, it will be disrespectful to heir of Duke Xing and Infanta." Qing stubbornly blocked the door and said. She was slender, so she could not block the door. However, she had a big broom in her hand, which blocked the door with her body. Even if Nanny Xing wanted to go over, she could not go over. Nanny Xing did not dare to bear the crime of disrespect. Moreover, at present, Madam of Duke Xing certainly wanted to show her love for Xiao Wanru. Naturally, she could not force her way in, which would be seen by others. Suppressing the anger in her heart, Nanny Xing continued to say kindly to an inferior servant girl, "When will the 5th miss come out? It will be dinner time soon or midnight soon." There are several volumes of scriptures to be read and copied, and they can't be interrupted in the middle of the night. Qing said seriously, with the broom in her hand in front of her, as if no one could rush in, which made Nanny Sheng so angry that smoke rose from her head. Chapter 569. But now she clearly knew that she couldn't get angry. She absolutely couldn't get angry. Madam wanted others to see her treat the fifth miss well, so she couldn't be angry. However, even though she repeatedly warned herself in her heart, Nanny Sheng still looked unhappy in front of the careless servant girl in front of her. The smile on her face faded, and her face darkened. Doesn't the fifth miss need to eat in the middle of the night? I have sent steamed buns with clear water. The fifth miss said that as long as she is sincere in cultivating, steamed buns with clear water can satisfy her hunger, and nothing else. Qing said insensitively, as if she didn't see Nanny Sheng's change of expression. Then I want to see the first miss. Nanny Sheng took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. The first miss just said that she wanted to copy scriptures for the heir of a duke and the infanta. She also copied them wholeheartedly, so she shouldn't be interrupted. Qing continued. Shuqi, who heard the noise in the corridor and was about to come over, stopped, turned around, and went into the room to report to Xiao Yanru. The fifth miss was sincerely reciting scriptures and copying scriptures, and she only brought steamed buns with clear water into the silence room. Her master was also copying scriptures. If she still met the people of Duke Xing's mansion, others would only think that her master was insincere or completely went through the motions, which was not good for the first miss's reputation. All the people around Xiao Yanru knew that she attached great importance to her reputation. If her reputation was accidentally ruined, Shuqi couldn't bear the responsibility. As expected, after getting inside and repeating what Qing had said to Nanny Sheng just now, Xiao Yanru became a little serious and said, "Please ask Nanny Sheng to go back. It's not appropriate for you to come in today. Fifth sister and I are going to recite scriptures and copy scriptures, so we can't be interrupted." "Yes, first miss," Shuqi answered and left, and then walked to the door. Nanny Sheng's face darkened after being annoyed by a servant girl who couldn't communicate with her for so long and didn't allow her to enter the courtyard. Now she saw Shuqi coming from a distance and was overjoyed. Finally, there was a smart person here. "Shuqi, come here." Nanny Sheng raised her voice and said, "Nanny Sheng." Shuqi came over, bowed to Nanny Sheng and said with a smile, "Ask this girl to move aside and let me in. I brought some gifts for Fifth Mississippi. Now that Fifth Miss is cultivating in seclusion, I will send them to Eldest Mississippi. When Fifth Miss comes out of seclusion, I will ask Eldest Miss to send them over." Nanny Sheng said as she looked at the big broom coming at her with disgust. She was really a rude servant girl who didn't know anything. She was so vulgar and made people angry just by looking at her. If not for the fact that he was Fifth Miss's servant, she would have pulled him away by force. Shuqi sighed in her heart, thinking that Nanny Sheng was the smartest one in the past, but why was she not smart now? She said that Fifth Miss was cultivating in seclusion and the First Miss had to pick up the things. She said it as if the First Miss was idle and had no filial piety. This was bad for the First Miss's reputation. "Nanny Sheng, it's really impossible. The First Miss is also meditating and copying scriptures for heir of Duke and Infanta. I'm afraid that she won't see you. Like the Fifth Miss, the First Miss also brought water and steamed buns in. If Nanny Sheng had come earlier, the First Miss would still be outside, but now it's impossible." Shuqi said with guilt on her face. Nanny Sheng was so angry that she wanted to spit blood this time. Her madam was anxious at the foot of the mountain, but nothing happened on the mountain. At this time, even the First Miss did not help madam. Instead, she seemed to advance and retreat with the Fifth Miss, which really made Nanny Sheng speechless with anger. Stamping her feet hard, Nanny Sheng said angrily, "Fine, fine, fine. I'll come next time." After that, she didn't say anything to Shuqi, turned around and left in a hurry. Several servant girls followed closely behind her, holding the gift boxes in their hands. They were still going back the way they came. Shuqi looked at Nanny Sheng's angry face uneasily. She knew that she had offended Nanny Sheng this time, but for the sake of the First Miss's good reputation, It was not convenient to let Nanny Sheng come in at this time. It was not a big deal. She just sent some gifts, which was not worth a big deal. After thinking about it, she ignored Qing and turned back to the main room to report. Mother, why did you send Nanny Sheng here in such a hurry? Did something happen again? Xiao Yanru didn't know that the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple had been exposed, and it was very bad for the reputation of Duke Xing's mansion. After frowning, she didn't take it seriously and just muttered to herself. She felt a little dissatisfied with her mother in her heart. Her reputation couldn't be ruined, not even by her mother. Hadn't she told her mother to stop for a while? Why didn't she stop after such a short time? She had got the ointment and was waiting for Xiao Wanru to use it. There were 2 bottles of the same ointment. One was for her own use. Of course, the one for her own use was good, while the one for Xiao Wanru was mixed with something. It was a royal gift from the Imperial Palace, but it was not directly given by the Imperial Palace. It was taken from Prince Yu and Prince Zhou. One of the bottles had been mixed with something by Xiao Yanru and Madame of Duke Xing. She had just sent the ointment here, so she should avoid arousing suspicion at this time. What did her mother want to do? Xiao Yanru, who didn't understand, felt strange, but she just felt strange for a while and didn't pay too much attention to it. Since she had said that she would recite and copy scriptures with Xiao Wanru today, she naturally had to abide by it. Although the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery were not good at passing messages, the people of the Ministry of Justice were still there, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Nanny Sheng came here with great fanfare just now, which must have alarmed the people of the Ministry of Justice. It was a good opportunity to make a name for her. With this in mind, she asked Shuqi to go to the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery and ask for a few more scriptures. It seemed that she was going to copy the scriptures sincerely. She showed her sincerity here, which also made people who knew about it praise her greatly. They increasingly felt that the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion was indeed talented and beautiful, decent and kind. Even her eldest uncle and aunt, who were in the next branch, were serious about filial piety and devoted to her as if she were their own daughter. She had a good reputation here, but Nanny Sheng said something that annoyed Madame of Duke Xing. Seeing the gift boxes brought down by several servant girls, Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that she picked up the teacup at hand and scolded angrily, Get out of here, all of you. Useless servant girls." Her words were very loud, and her elegant temperament in the past was swept away. The servant girls who brought the gifts were so scared that they retreated in panic. In the yard they saw Duke, who was always smiling, striding in. His face was completely different from before. They did not dare to look at Duke Xing's face, which had changed a little due to anger. After hurriedly saluting, they all retreated into the yard. They were far away from the main room, but they did not dare to really walk away, trembling with fear that Madame would find them again later. "Madame, don't worry. When we went up the mountain just now, we could have put down the gifts, but the first miss was unwilling to accept them. I'm afraid that she still doesn't know what happened at the foot of the mountain. If the first miss knows it, she will definitely accept the gift boxes next time. It will be much more convenient for the first miss to hand them over to the fifth miss." Only Nanny Sheng was left in the room. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that her face turned pale, she knew that she was furious and hurriedly persuaded her. The fifth miss happily accepted the gifts from her madam, in order to show the harmonious relationship between madam and the fifth miss to the world. However, the gift boxes sent up the mountain were returned unopened, which was like a slap in madam's face. Nanny Sheng was also angry that the first miss did not help madam but took the same path as the fifth Mississippi. But after thinking about it, she thought that it might be because the first miss did not know what happened at the Baiyun Taoist temple. If she knew it, she would definitely help madam. "How dare you? You want to tell Ru about this kind of thing? Look at you as a mother. You can't even do such a small thing well and even implicate Ru." The door was kicked heavily. The half-closed door was suddenly kicked open, and Duke Xing came in with anger. In the past, no matter how angry he was, Duke Xing could always put on a smiling face and looked easy to talk to. It was rare to see him so angry that his face changed. Nanny Sheng was Duke Xing's wet nurse. At the sight of Duke Xing, she knew that something bad was going to happen. She shrank her head and did not dare to say anything more. She stood behind Madame of Duke Xing and did not dare to move. The High Duke was really angry. Whatever he said would be wrong, so it was better for him to say nothing. Duke Xing walked in and sat down on the chair in the middle. He looked at Madame of Duke Xing coldly, slapped the table hard with his hand, and said sternly, "You should solve these bad things by yourselves. You can't get involved in Ru'er's affairs. She should do what she should do." Originally, she was supposed to cultivate in seclusion with 5th Mississippi. You always implicate her. If you ruin her reputation, can you afford to pay for it? His words were extremely rude. Madame of Duke Xing was in a bad mood. Being rebuked in front of her, she immediately blushed with anger. Unwilling to show weakness, she glared at Duke Xing and said, "This kind of thing? This kind of thing is my business? It is obviously done by your stupid mother. Now all the womenfolk in the mansion are implicated. If you have the ability, you can let her bear this reputation by herself, so that I don't have to make up for it here." Others didn't know, but Duke Xing and Madame of Duke Xing certainly knew that the cause of this matter was old Madame. Duke Xing's face darkened and he snorted coldly, "I don't care how you solve this matter or not, but I will never allow you to disturb Ru'er. Don't you know how important Ru'er's reputation is? Don't let Ru'er be criticized by others for some trivial matters." "But can I suppress this matter? The whole capital city is talking about the womenfolk in our mansion." Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that she was about to cry because of his contemptuous attitude. She pointed outside and said loudly. Her sharp voice made several servant girls and old maids serving outside tremble involuntarily. They stood there with their heads lowered like quails, pretending that they couldn't hear anything. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing was so angry, Duke Xing's face became a little better, perhaps because he felt that this matter was caused by his mother and he was in the wrong. But he still looked cold. "If you can't solve it, you can ask my mother. Pay attention, don't disturb Ru'er with this kind of thing." After saying that, he stood up and flicked his wide sleeves. A teacup on the table was swept to the ground by him, making a crisp sound of breaking. However, Duke Xing strode away without looking back. Chapter 570. Nanny Sheng hurriedly reached out to hold Madame of Duke Xing and helped her breathe on her back. It took Madame of Duke Xing a long time to recover. "Look, he doesn't care about anything, but he puts all the blame on me. If it's that woman, Madame." Nanny Sheng raised her voice in a panic and unconsciously looked at the open door. The door was open, and they could see 2 rows of servant girls and old maids standing in the yard. Although they were all respectful, Madame of Duke Xing's voice was uncontrollably louder just now. "Ask them to leave and keep their mouths shut, otherwise." Madame of Duke Xing also came to her senses at this time and glanced sternly at the servants in the yard. In fact, they were a little far away, so it was impossible for them to hear anything. There were a lot of people in the yard, otherwise she could kill them directly or find a reason to kill them. Seeing Madame of Duke Xing's terrible eyes, Nanny Sheng's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. She hurried to the door and said to the 2 rows of servants outside the yard, "Go away and keep your mouths shut. If you dare to say anything, we dare not." The servant girls and old maids hurriedly said, "Go away." Nanny Sheng waved her hand. The servant girls and old maids understood and all left the main room far away. No matter what they did, they could not get close to the main room. Seeing that there were no conspicuous people around, Nanny Sheng breathed a sigh of relief. After entering the door and closing it, she came to Madame of Duke Xing and persuaded, "Madame, don't talk about it. In fact, he is just crazy. It really doesn't bother you, Madame." "Crazy? A crazy woman is more important than me. I don't know what his brain is thinking." Her words not only failed to persuade Madame of Duke Xing, but also made her face turn blue with anger. She was a good wife at home and helped him solve all kinds of troubles, but he didn't take her seriously from beginning to end. This made Madame of Duke Xing, who had always felt that she was a winner, almost unable to control herself and wanted to smash everything in the room. He pushed all the things in Duke Xing's mansion to her and blamed her for not doing her best when something went wrong. He never put his mind on Duke Xing's mansion. "Madam, let's tell old Madam about it now." This matter has become so serious that old madam has to have her own rules. We can't let First Miss be tainted with a bad reputation. Seeing that Madam of Duke Xing couldn't control herself, Nanny Xing hurriedly changed the topic and left the matter to old madam. Madam of Duke Xing's words touched her heart. She didn't want to implicate her daughter. Her son and daughter were the most precious to her and would be the most noble in this mansion in the future. She couldn't slack off at all. Let's go to find her. Madam of Duke Xing stood up and said with a cold face. She couldn't bear it, and she didn't want to bear it. It wasn't her fault in the first place. Why did the mother and son let her bear it with a clear conscience? After dressing up a little, Madam of Duke Xing took Nanny Xing to old Madam's Chuntang courtyard. Madam! Nanny Yu had just finished serving old Madam's medicine. Seeing Madam of Duke Xing come in, she immediately bowed to her. Mother, how are you? Madame of Duke Xing forced a smile to Nanny Yu, walked to the bed, squatted in front of old Madame, and asked with concern. Old Madame raised her eyes and found that Madame of Duke Xing's face was pale and her expression was very ugly. Her clothes looked a little messy, which seemed to be done in a hurry. There were also faint tears in the corners of her eyes. What happened? Old Madame asked. Nanny Yu frowned tightly and looked at Madame of Duke Xing worriedly. Of course, what happened outside had also spread to Chuntang courtyard, but Nanny Yu was worried about old Madame's health, so she didn't let anyone tell her. But now Madame's intention should be to tell her the truth, right? Old Madame's health was not very good. She wanted to step forward, but she still lowered her head. Although she was a respectable servant, she was just a servant. Nanny Yu was very clear about this. Since she was a servant, she should listen to her master. Even if it was against her mind, she had to listen to her master. Old Madame was her master, and Madame was also her master. Mother, it is said that this evil Taoist priest Xiaoshui is a man, and he colludes with someone in our mansion to ruin the fifth Mrs. reputation. It is said that our mansion may have a close relationship with this evil Taoist priest, and even may have a secret relationship with him. Hearing old Madame's question, Madame of Duke Xing's eyes immediately turned red, and her legs went soft. She knelt in front of the bed and said, Mother, if they only suspect me, it doesn't matter if I don't know it. But, poor unmarried girls in our mansion. They actually said that the evil Taoist priest Xiaoshui started from Duke Yong's mansion and our mansion. Madame of Duke Xing said and burst into tears. What? How could he be so vicious? Old Madame's hand heavily hit the edge of the bed, and her face turned livid with anger. Nanny Yu looked up at Madame of Duke Xing, and then at old Madame, who was so angry that blue veins stood out on her forehead, and then lowered her head. She also knew the news outside the mansion, and naturally knew that the most important thing now was Madame of Duke Xing. After all, she was in charge of the mansion. Although there were occasionally rumors about other masters, everyone thought that Madame of Duke Xing was the most credible one. In Nanny Yu's mind, this was just a rumor, and no one in the mansion believed it. Neither old Madame nor Duke Xing would believe that Madame would do this, so the rumor was just a rumor. Madame didn't need to make this matter known to old Madame with such great fanfare. She sighed softly and reminded herself again that she was just a servant, but her eyes still fell on old Madame. Mother, you don't know, right? It is said that this matter has even been brought to the Yuhui nunnery. Ru'er's servant girl said yesterday that the people of the Ministry of Justice are also investigating this matter, and his brother, even Duke, is now being gossiped about when he goes out. How can Duke keep a foothold in front of the ministers? Madame of Duke Xing began to sob. Hearing this, old Madame was angry and annoyed. She stretched out her trembling fingers and wanted to say something, but she felt that her chest was so stuffy that she couldn't even breathe. She breathed hard and her face turned red. Something seemed to be blocked in her throat. Her eyes popped out, and she collapsed on the bed. Nanny Yu rushed over, pushed Madame of Duke Xing away, and said modestly, Madam, old Madame has a relapse. Please wait a moment. After saying that, she ignored Madame of Duke Xing and held old Madame in her arms. She tried hard to soothe old Madame's breath in her chest, and asked the servant girl to get the pills. Fortunately, the pills were all prepared early. After taking the water from the pills, Nanny Yu carefully fed the water to Old Madam. Seeing that Old Madam's expression improved slightly, she breathed a sigh of relief. She patted Old Madam's back and asked her to spit out a mouthful of phlegm in her throat. Only then did Old Madam recover. Mother, how are you? Madam of Duke Xing was also shocked. Of course, she didn't mean to scare Old Madam. If something really happened, Duke Xing would not spare her. I'm fine. Although Old Madam recovered, she still had a splitting headache, and her throat was even more astringent, which made her feel uncomfortable. You can go outside and say that I was deceived by others. I listened to people's words and mistakenly believed the words of scoundrels, so that fifth maid almost got into trouble. Old Madam said with difficulty. She reached out to cover her chest, but her old face showed a little gloomy. But who is the scoundrel? Who is the scoundrel in our mansion? Madam of Duke Xing seemed to be frightened and completely lost her usual shrewdness. She looked at Old Madam with red eyes and asked her to make a decision. She wanted to find someone to pay off the debt. She wanted to see who Old Madam would give up. This matter had become so big that someone had to pay for it. A servant's status was too low. Although it was not good to listen to people's words, it was better than the reputation of her grandchildren. In particular, the reputation of the children of the second branch could not be ruined, because all of them were beloved by Old Madam. Your adopted daughter, Old Madam said. She fell back and closed her eyes weakly. Madam of Duke Xing froze for a moment and immediately reacted. She asked tentatively, Qi Rongji? Yes, it's her. Let her pay for it. I heard that she had a bad relationship with fifth maid when she was in Qin's mansion, and it was even worse when she was in Jiangzhou. Old Madam said with her eyes closed. But she is a little girl who has not been in the capital city for a long time. She doesn't know about this, about Xiushui. Madam of Duke Xing was not reluctant to give up Qi Rongji, but she couldn't connect Qi Rongji with this matter. It was too far-fetched, which made people more suspicious. She only felt that Duke Xing's mansion pushed her to pay for it, and she was an adopted daughter, which was very unkind. Let her say that she heard it from others. Just say, she heard it from the eldest daughter of Qin's mansion, who is now married to Duke Yong's mansion. Since Old Madam thought of Qi Rongji paying for it, she certainly thought of her background and origin. Madam of Duke Xing also mentioned it just now, which showed that Duke Yong's mansion was also very suspicious. In this case, it was also normal that this matter was initiated by Duke Yong's mansion. Although Old Madam had not been in charge of affairs for many years, she also remembered something about Xiushui. At first, it seemed that it was indeed spread from Duke Yong's mansion. At that time, Countess Yong was still the current Old Madam of Duke Yong. At several banquets, she repeatedly said that Xiushui's magic was brilliant. Thinking about it carefully, she did mean to help Xiushui to promote Xiushui. If you put the blame on Duke Yong's mansion, I am afraid that Old Madam of Duke Yong's mansion will not let it go easily, right? Madam of Duke Xing said hesitantly. Although Duke Yong's mansion had declined, it still had some resources, so they could not be completely underestimated. I don't put the blame on them, but on Qi Rongji. As for what Qi Rongji will say, it depends on her. We have raised her for a few years in vain, so she has to do something. Isn't her elder brother very capable? Help her pass on the voice transmission and say that the one in Qin's mansion told her. Old Madam said coldly. Originally, it was a reluctant idea to admit Qi Rongji. This would let her repay the kindness, and it was reasonable. Chapter 571. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Justice hasn't come up with a plan for the assassination in the Yuhui nunnery. It's obviously incompetent and incompetent. An Imperial censor came forward and reported. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Justice has wasted a lot of people's money and disturbed the people but got nothing in the end. The assassination of several princes and the incident in the Yuhui nunnery all prove this. Your Majesty, please punish the Ministry of Justice. Another Imperial censor came forward and raised an objection after saluting the emperor who was sitting high up on the throne. Your Majesty, the incident in the Yuhui nunnery and the assassination of several princes are of great importance. It's not what you think. It's even related to the remnants of the previous dynasty. We are trying our best to investigate it and dare not relax at all. Qiu Qian, the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, stood up calmly and replied to the emperor. Since it's the remnants of the previous dynasty, we should act faster. If we delay it, it will only make people doubt the ability of the Ministry of Justice, and it will also affect the safety of the emperor. Since these remnants of the previous dynasty have done so much in the Yuhui nunnery, they may attack the princes again next time. Another imperial censor came out of the censorate and said as soon as he stood up. It was obvious that he wanted to support the previous two imperial censors, but the topic was stealthily changed. Chu Luchen closed his eyes slightly. Sitting in the wheelchair, he looked very handsome, but he was also very weak. His pale face and pale lips showed that he was not in good health. Originally, he didn't need to come here to attend the court session. What could he do with his poor health? It was good enough that he could take good care of himself. In the past, he never attended the court session. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were also fine before, but the officials had asked the princes to attend the court session. Since Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were going to attend the court session, he, Prince Chen, who was very noticeable, naturally had to arrange affairs. As for whether his health was good or not, it was another matter. At least the emperor treated everyone equally. Only Prince Xin, the youngest one, could wait. Not only was Prince Xin a little younger, but he was also not a lot calmer. The emperor also said that when he was a little older, he would enter the court to observe politics. Chu Luchen had never been to the court before, because it was said that he had been ill in bed. Many people were surprised that he suddenly went to the court today. But when they saw the prince sitting in a wheelchair with his eyes closed and resting, they pretended not to see it, although it was a little improper. What was the point of messing around with a sick person who might not even have a tomorrow? Moreover, this person was favored. If he accidentally caused some trouble, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. Moreover, all the officials understood that this person was the most legitimate one. If he wanted to come to the imperial court and anyone stopped him, they would be cursed for thousands of years in history. Therefore, even those imperial censors who were very strict and paid attention to their reputation would not dare to offend Chu Luchen. Although only the crown prince and the emperor had a seat in the imperial court, this was the best he could do in his current condition. It was good enough that he could still hold on with his eyes closed. What else could they ask of Prince Qin? Your Majesty, the remnants of the former dynasty are fierce. We must get rid of all these people, lest the people in the world be plunged into misery again. Another official stepped out and said loudly, Yes, Your Majesty, I ask Your Majesty to investigate this matter again. We can't let the enemy sweep through several cities like last time. How many people lost their homes and lives because of this? Even my elder brother. Duke Xing stood out in front of the steps. His round and pleasant smiling face turned red, and his eyes also turned red. When he said this, he choked with sobs and couldn't say a word. His words aroused a lot of sympathy. At that time, many people who were killed in the war were closely related to the senior officials in the imperial court. When the people of the former dynasty caught people related to the senior officials, they all used cruel means, and few people could survive. As soon as he said this, it immediately aroused a common hatred for the enemy, and many officials stood out. Chu Luchen raised his eyes, and his long eyelashes fluttered twice. He looked expressionlessly at the angry officials in the hall, and then looked at Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou standing in front of the officials. Then he slowly lowered his beautiful eyes, continued to support his head with his hands, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes to rest. Of course, this was not the focus this time. Everyone knew that the remnants of the former dynasty had to find out. But now it could not be realized immediately. The figures of the former dynasty flashed in the Yuhui nunnery, but when they continued to investigate, they found that although the black-clad men were from the former dynasty, they didn't leave any survivors, so they couldn't find anything. As for the biggest secret in the Yuhui nunnery, it was not the former dynasty, but the position of the former empress. What they were going to talk about today was actually not the former dynasty, and it was what the officials of the imperial court were best at doing. He stealthily steered the matter away. In fact, he didn't come here voluntarily. He was instructed by his uncle to come out and listen to politics and exercise more. Maybe his body would get better and he would be able to hang out with normal people. The intention of the drunkard was not to drink, and so was he. It would arouse suspicion if he took the initiative to enter the imperial court with a weak body, but since he was forced to come here by his uncle, even if he did something out of line, it would not be criticized. The officials asked one after another, and the emperor, who was high above the imperial court, finally spoke. We should do our best to clean up the affairs of the former dynasty and never let the remnants have a chance to take action. The Ministry of Justice, the capital governor, and the guards in the capital must pay attention to this matter, and there must be no carelessness. If something really happens, I will ask seriously. Yes, we will do our best. The officials under the stairs immediately expressed their loyalty. Your Majesty, I think that the former emperors also seem to be in chaos. If they don't behave themselves, there is a way to sacrifice them. Another official came out and reported, I think that although the former dynasty is involved in the affairs of the Yuhui nunnery, the former emperors in the Yuhui nunnery are also very restless. If something bad happens, the innocence of the royal family will be ruined. As soon as he said this, several imperial censors immediately nodded. Your Majesty, I agree. The reason why the former emperors live in the Yuhui nunnery should be the root of the chaos. Moreover, there is the son of the former emperor who was suddenly drawn out. I really find it hard to believe. I also find it hard to believe. It's really hard to believe. Someone secretly glanced at Chu Luchen, who closed his eyes slightly, and said in a low voice. Chu Luchen was also the son of the former emperor. Although this matter was not about him, people inexplicably wanted to look at him. In fact, the reason why they looked at Chu Luchen was that they saw the emperor's eyes turn over. The emperor was paying attention to Prince Qin. Many people came to such a conclusion in their hearts, and this matter was indeed related to Prince Qin. Your Majesty, I don't think it's appropriate. Because of Your Majesty's kindness, the former emperors did not ask to sacrifice themselves for the former emperor. In the former dynasty, there was such a matter, but the former dynasty was tyrannical and lost the people's support. Your Majesty can't do this. Another official raised an objection. Your Majesty is kind, but you can't be used by others. The Yuhui nunnery has been in such a mess. It's impossible that the former emperors have nothing to do with it. If the child is really in the Yuhui nunnery, how can it have nothing to do with them? Others don't know, but they are in the nunnery together. How can they not know that there is one more child? I think they deceived Your Majesty together. Another official turned around and walked out of the steps. But as soon as he finished speaking, he was refuted by another official. The atmosphere in the court was very hot, but the members of the royal family were very calm. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou stood at the top of the steps without saying a word. The emperor sat there and seemed to listen to the officials, but he looked at his nephew from time to time. His nephew, Prince Qin, who had been sick and weak since he was a child and was forced to come to the court today, seemed to have nothing to do with it and only needed to take good care of himself. He even closed his eyes, which made people unable to see his emotions. How could he be so at ease when it came to the former emperor's bloodline? Chu Luchen was very at ease. His steady look made people feel that he knew everything, but everyone knew that he actually knew nothing. This matter was carried out in secret before. Who would have expected that the matter of a playboy would cause such a big event? Who would have thought that the former emperor and the posthumous child of the former emperor were involved? In fact, this posthumous child was younger than Chu Luchen. It was said that she was pregnant not long after she entered the palace, but the former emperor didn't tell her about it because he was ill at that time. Later, the former emperor died of illness. For fear of causing trouble, this concubine was locked in the Yuhui nunnery with the former emperors and secretly gave birth there. Later, this child left the Yuhui nunnery by chance. The former emperor actually had another child, which had a great impact on Prince Qin. Your Majesty, I think it is still to be discussed whether this person is the son of the former emperor. Not to mention the matter of the Yuhui nunnery, he himself is still questionable. Prime Minister Zhang, who had been listening to the quarrel, suddenly stood out, bowed to the emperor and said loudly. His words made the people who were still quarreling stop for a moment. I agree. The prime minister Wen also stood out unhurriedly. They were the two prime ministers in the imperial court. One was the left prime minister, and the other was the right prime minister. It was rare for them to agree with each other. Immediately, all the disputes just now were suppressed, and the imperial court quieted down. Chu Luchen slightly opened his eyes, glanced at the imperial court coldly, and then closed his eyes again, seeming to be not very interested. Your Majesty, if you want to identify the truth, you can directly summon someone here in front of the officials. Prime Minister Zhang suggested. Your Majesty, I also think it is better to directly clarify. If he is not the son of the former emperor, he should be killed. The royal bloodline should not be mixed. If he is, we can also submit a memorial to prevent the former emperor's bloodline from being lost. The Prime Minister Wen slowly expressed his agreement. Since the two prime ministers expressed the same opinion, a large number of officials immediately expressed their support. Chapter 572. The golden-armored guard went down and soon came up with a man. After forcing him to kneel on the ground, the guard retreated. Chu Qing of the Grass Era greets Emperor Uncle. At the foot of the steps was a young man dressed in an ordinary navy blue robe. After kneeling down, he bowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times to the emperor above the Dan Ke and said loudly. Some people knew about this. Hearing him call the emperor uncle, those who didn't know looked at Chu Luchen, who was sitting in the wheelchair, in astonishment. This was the one who called the former emperor uncle, but he was raised as the emperor's youngest son. Moreover, he was the lineal eldest son of the former emperor. Then who was the person in front of them? Just now, the emperor kept mentioning the Yuhui nunnery and vaguely mentioned the son of the former emperor. Was this person the son of the former emperor? When he raised his head, he had an outstanding and handsome face. Compared with Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou, he was far less outstanding than Chu Luchen. There seemed to be some similarities, but it was not very obvious. When they looked closely, they couldn't see it. Are you Chu Qing? The emperor's eyes also fell on Chu Qing's face. His eyes were cold without any ripples. Yes, I am. Chu Qing said respectfully, but his behavior was natural and unrestrained, which made people have to praise him. Tell me about your experience. The emperor said. I was born in the Yuhui nunnery since I was a child. At that time, my mother had already entered the Yuhui nunnery. She was worried that something would happen to me, so she didn't dare to tell others about what had happened to me. After that, I had been hiding in the courtyard of the Yuhui nunnery and dressed as a woman. Something happened in the Yuhui nunnery. My mother was afraid that something would happen to me, so she asked me to go down the mountain secretly. Originally, I just wanted to hide my name, but I didn't expect that I would be involved in the kidnapping of a girl. Chu Qing said with fervor and assurance. Several senior officials of the Ministry of Justice all knew about this matter. They knew that the elder brother who had killed a girl and escaped was saved by this person, and then this matter was exposed. Who is your mother? The Prime Minister asked with a cold frown. Chu Qing didn't directly say her title before. Those who knew only knew that she was an, but they didn't know who she was. The former emperor's imperial noble consort Yu. Chu Qing said loudly. His words immediately shocked all the ministers. At that time, the late emperor favored imperial noble consort Yu very much. It was said that imperial noble consort Yu was a branch of a big aristocratic family in the previous dynasty. The Yu family had a close relationship with the royal family of the previous dynasty. Fortunately, imperial noble consort Yu was only a branch of the Yu family that was about to lose contact with them. This was also the former emperors, who had the highest position in the imperial palace. It was said that when the late emperor was alive, imperial noble consort Yu was almost as powerful as the empress. She was very powerful in the harem and didn't get along well with the late empress. This should be one of the important reasons why she didn't dare to say that she was pregnant when the emperor was sick. Not long after entering the palace, she got a high position, secretly got pregnant and entered the Yuhui nunnery to give birth to a child. This imperial noble consort Yu sounded like a big shot. My mother was pregnant at that time, but my father passed away. She cried so hard that she fainted. After that, she was sent to the Yuhui nunnery and kept it a secret. If it weren't for the accident in the Yuhui nunnery this time, my mother wouldn't have sent me down the mountain in a hurry. I didn't know much about the world, so I got into trouble when I went down the mountain. That's why my secret was exposed. Chu Qing explained the cause and effect clearly. Chu Luqian, who was sitting on one side, raised his eyes, and a pair of handsome eyes fell coldly on Chu Qing. He looked calm and just rubbed his forehead with his hand, as if he had a slight headache. Hearing this, many of the officials nodded slowly and felt that this matter was credible. The imperial noble consort Yu of the previous dynasty was also a powerful figure. Moreover, she was still in the Yuhui nunnery. In fact, it was very easy to find out whether it was true or not. The emperor should also want to recognize this person. Otherwise, he would not have brought her to the court and told her his background in front of all the officials. Otherwise, he would have directly punished her in secret. Although the son of the former emperor was not the eldest legitimate son, he was also the noble son of a concubine. In this case, could it also be considered that this son of a concubine actually had the possibility to inherit the throne? The current emperor doted on Prince Qin very much, even more than his own sons. If this person in front of him was also a son of a concubine, did it mean that Prince Qin would fall out of favor? And the Empress Dowager also loved Prince Qin because of the former emperor. It seemed that this Prince Qin really had nothing to do with him. A sick and weak grandson who no one knew when he would die was always a little less pleasing than a healthy grandson. From the perspective of the former emperor, the Empress Dowager should also like the person in front of her, not the one who was half lying in the wheelchair. Some smart people in the court immediately felt that the person in front of them might be favored and have a meteoric rise. Your Majesty, since he is the eldest son of the former emperor, he should be rewarded. As expected, Prime Minister Zhang was the first to speak bluntly. Although Prime Minister Wen did not say anything, he also nodded in agreement. The bloodline of the former emperor naturally could not be left to the common people. Then all the officials also agreed. Although the emperor did not say anything, he nodded to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch took 2 steps forward, took out an imperial edict that had been prepared for a long time, and read it. All the officials knelt down to listen to the edict. The edict was very simple. It said that Chu Qing was indeed the son of the former emperor and was indeed the flesh and blood of the royal family. He had indeed been raised in the Yuhui nunnery for many years. All the S in the Yuhui nunnery could testify, so he was conferred the title of Commandery Prince Qing. As soon as the edict came out, although Chu Qing was stunned for a moment, he immediately thanked the emperor. The Ministry of Justice has to pay close attention to the matter of the Yuhui nunnery. If there are any remnants of the former dynasty, we will not let it go. As for the S of the former dynasty, we have to discuss it with the officials. I'm tired today. You can leave now. The emperor stood up and said slowly. After that, he left the hall with a group of eunuchs and palace maids. The officials also left in 2s and 3s. Prince Xian and Prince Zhou walked at the end. They looked at Chu Qing, who was still kneeling on the ground, with disdain and a sneer on their lips. Then they turned around and left. A commandery prince could not attract their attention. They had thought that their father would also confer him the title of prince, but now it seemed that he was just an idle commandery prince. Xiao Xuanzi waited until almost all the people left before he pushed Chu Liuqian's wheelchair to leave. "You're my second brother?" At this time, Chu Qing had stood up. When he saw Chu Liuqian in the wheelchair, he hurried over with a surprised and excited face. Chu Liuqian raised his eyes and looked at him. There was a hint of coldness in his cold eyes, which was not what a sick person should have at all. It was extremely cold and aggressive. Chu Qing involuntarily took a few steps back. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were forced back by such a cold gaze, and the friendly smile on his face also stiffened. Xiao Xuanzi glanced at him coldly and slowly pushed Chu Liuqian away, ignoring him. Watching Chu Liuqian leave, Chu Qing's face darkened and his expression also became cold. He clenched his fists hard. He was just a sick person. Did he really think that he was someone important? When he won the favor of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor in the future, no one would pay attention to this sick person. But now it was not the right time. After making up his mind, Chu Qing walked out quickly, trying to catch up with Xiao Xuanzi. However, he found that Xiao Xuanzi, who had just left the hall, was called away by a eunuch. It seemed that this eunuch should be the emperor's servant. The emperor actually called a eunuch over at this time. Was it for his own matter? Chu Qing stood in the main hall, feeling a little uneasy. Chu Luchen was indeed called away by the emperor. He did not go to the emperor's imperial study, but only received Chu Luchen in a side hall where the emperor was. There was no one else in the side hall, except for a personal chief eunuch standing there. When Chu Liuchen's wheelchair came in, he waved his hand to signal Xiao Xuanzi to leave, and then he took the initiative to push Chu Liuchen's wheelchair. Xiao Xuanzi responded and left, standing outside the hall to wait. The chief eunuch pushed Chu Liuchen's wheelchair into the hall. This side hall was not big, even smaller than the emperor's imperial study. It was precisely because it was not big that it seemed to be a little domestic, just like the flower hall in the general mansion, which looked extremely leisurely. The emperor sat on the chair in the middle. When he saw Chu Luchen come in, his cold face softened a little. He asked the chief eunuch to put Chu Luchen in front of him and said with a gentle look, "You don't have to care about that person just now. He's just someone you missed out. I and your imperial grandmother still care about you the most. They will never let Chu Qing affect you. Uncle, don't worry. I'm fine. I just don't like one more person suddenly appearing and hiding in a place like the Yuhui nunnery," Chu Luchen said gently. Although it could be seen that his smile did not reach his eyes, he was very reluctant. But it was also known that he was still trying to show that he didn't care. The emperor sighed softly, stood up, and gently patted him on the shoulder. "In the hearts of your imperial grandmother and uncle, you are the only son of my brother. What others do has nothing to do with you. You don't have to care about him. If you want to talk to him, just do. If you don't want to talk to him, just ignore him." These words were spoken in a very intimate manner, completely like a senior. Moreover, it was the appearance of an elder who doted on the younger generation. Even his usual voice had softened a little. "Thank you." Chu Luchen stood up with the help of the wheelchair and bowed deeply to the emperor. Although his face was calm, he could not hide the excitement at the bottom of his eyes. It seemed that he was touched, which made the emperor very satisfied. "Well, sit down and have a good rest. Don't get up. Although you are a little better, you can't stand such torment. If you can recover in the future, come to the imperial court. Since you are helping me, you can't be lazy." The emperor smiled and personally pulled Chu Luchen up to let him sit down. "I'll listen to your arrangement," Chu Luchen said gently. He looked as gentle and elegant as jade. Although he was sick and weak, there was a natural elegance in him. The emperor felt more and more pity for him. He waved his hand, and the chief eunuch pushed Chu Liuchen's wheelchair out. Xiao Xuanzi took it over at the door of the hall, and then pushed Chu Luchen away. When the chief eunuch Durong returned to the hall, he saw that the emperor was still looking at the back of Prince Chen, leaving with a gloomy look. He hurriedly lowered his head and stood aside. "Do you think he will hate me?" The emperor's voice was very soft, as if he was talking to himself, but Durong knew that he was talking to him. Chapter 573. You just recognized a nephew, the posthumous son of the late emperor? Xiao Wenru asked lightly and was not too surprised. She had been wondering when the posthumous son would be exposed, but now it happened very fast, which was different from the last life. At this time, she happened to be standing on a cliff at the back, and she could faintly see the courtyard behind the high wall. Occasionally, some women appeared in her sight. They were all dressed in black, but they all kept their hair. They should be the S of the late emperor. Omega 4 all 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 Omega 4 Omega. The side door of the high wall was opened. There were a lot of people here today, including officials of the Ministry of Justice and some eunuchs in the Imperial Palace. There was also a young man dressed in gorgeous clothes. It seemed that he was the one who came here. In the last life, the matter of the Yuhui nunnery broke out later than now. Later, she had seen the newly recognized commandery Prince Qing from a distance in the Imperial Palace. They had the same name, but in the last life, it seemed that he was not involved in the case of a playboy robbing a woman. Instead, he accidentally bumped into an official's carriage and was discovered. It seemed to have something to do with Great Elder Princess. Xiao Wanru was not clear about this. She only heard from the beauties in the talent show in the last life that the talent show also intended to choose a princess for commandery Prince Qing at that time, so there was a rumor about commandery Prince Qing. It was said that although commandery Prince Qing was the posthumous son of the previous dynasty, he did not seem to be recognized by the emperor. He was recognized only because there were too many rumors outside, and it seemed that he really had royal blood. However, commandery Prince Qing was not favored after being recognized. It was said that he accidentally appeared in someone else's case or bumped into someone else's carriage. In fact, it just showed that commandery Prince Qing was very scheming. Xiao Wanru was now sure that commandery Prince Qing should have something to do with Mo Qiui, and he might even be Mo Qiui's poor fellow countryman. If her grandmother hadn't refused before, would she have sent him down the mountain out of sympathy? Then when commandery Prince Qing appeared in front of the emperor, her grandmother would be involved. Commandery Prince Qing was not favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. If her grandmother came in rashly, she would definitely get into trouble. If the emperor and the empress dowager didn't like them, a great elder princess who didn't have any real power and only had the title but no real power, if the emperor and the empress dowager didn't like her, she would definitely have a hard time. A trace of coldness flashed across her watery eyes. Commandery Prince Qing and Mo Qiui obviously wanted to use her maternal grandmother as a stepping stone. That night, he saw someone go to Mo Qiui's room through the high wall. It should be this commandery Prince Qing. Thinking of Mo Qiui's departure, he sneered. As expected, this commandery Prince Qing, who grew up in the Yuhui nunnery, was not an ordinary person. However, he might have miscalculated one thing. Chu Luqian thought that commandery Prince Qing, who had a similar background and a healthier body, would be less favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. But in fact, in the last life, commandery Prince Qing was not favored at all, and it did not affect Chu Luqian at all. She had sent the painting to the right person. Chu Luqian had taken her to see commandery Prince Qing sneakily before, so he must have known about this person for a long time. Yes, he was born in the Yuhui nunnery. I heard that he came here today to find his mother, and it seems that he wants to take his mother away from here. I heard that his mother is the former Imperial noble consort Yu. The emperor now conferred her the title of Old Princess Yu and allowed her to live in commandery Prince Qing's mansion with her son, Yu Jie said. So many people came to the gate of the Yuhui nunnery with great fanfare today, and the whole Yuhui nunnery knew it. Yu Jie inquired about the cause of the matter. It had been a while since they entered the nunnery, and now they saw many people coming out. Then a man in luxurious clothes came out with a girl in his arms. Yu Jie could not see her clearly because she lowered her head, but she could vaguely see her old posture and appearance. She looked a little too old, and she should not be very old. The former emperor's imperial noble consort Yu seems to be very old. Yu Jie also saw the scene below and said in surprise. She had good eyesight. Not only did she see that the imperial noble consort Yu, who was being supported, seemed to have difficulty walking, but her hair was not as black as that of the girl beside her, and she seemed to be a little gray. It should be 30J. Xiao Wanru calculated and said. It's not 30J, it's 40J. Xiao Yanru's overly soft voice suddenly came into her ears. She turned around and saw Xiao Yanru standing on the path up the mountain. It seemed that she also came here to watch the fun. Big sister. Xiao Wanru said lightly. Fifth sister, are you also here to see the newly recognized commandery, Prince Qing? Xiao Yanru said with a slight smile. She came over and stood beside Xiao Wanru. She also looked down and said with a smile, it is said that this imperial noble consort Yu was not young when she entered the imperial palace. Because of the war, her marriage was delayed, but she was extremely beautiful. The former emperor liked her at first sight, so he took her into the imperial palace. However, she was unlucky. Not long after she entered the imperial palace, the former emperor died. Isn't it said that the former emperor was very favored when he was alive? Was he on par with the former empress? Xiao Wanru said in surprise. She really didn't know about it. Yes, she has been favored since she entered the Imperial Palace, but it has only been less than 2 months. Xiao Yanru said with a smile. Xiao Wanru frowned slightly, and there was a trace of deepness in her watery eyes. So it was different from what she thought. This imperial noble consort Yu, who was said to be very favored, had actually been favored for 1 or 2 months. She, who was unlucky, was sent to the Yuhui nunnery soon after she entered the imperial palace. It sounded really pitiful. Xiao Wanru looked at the crowd gradually going out and asked curiously, Commandery Prince Qing used to live here. Big sister, have you found it? If it were so easy to find it, it wouldn't have happened now. Fifth sister, you have lived on this mountain for a period of time. Do you know anything? Xiao Yanru said with a faint smile. No. Xiao Wanru said with certainty. The two of them suddenly laughed and then turned their heads together. Xiao Yanru reached out to point down and sighed. It's really surprising that the posthumous son of the former emperor is so healthy. It's a pity for Prince Chen. Her words were extremely meaningful, and it seemed that she had not finished her words, which could lead to a topic. However, Xiao Wanru didn't seem to notice her words. Looking at the crowd that had gone far away and the high wall that had been closed again, she turned her feet and said, Big sister, there's nothing to see here. Do you want to go back together? You go back first. I'll have a look. Xiao Yanru shook her head and said with a smile. Then I'll go first. Xiao Wanru walked towards the path that wound around the mountain. Fifth sister, take care. Xiao Yanru looked at her with a smile and politely. The two of them passed by each other. One went down, while the other continued to go up the mountain. Xiao Wanru looked back halfway and found that the first miss was in high spirits today. She was still climbing up. In the past, the two of them would occasionally stand here and enjoy the scenery, but neither of them would go up again. On the one hand, it was because the scenery was not much more beautiful than here if they went up. On the other hand, the upper section was much steeper than the lower section. Miss, what is the first miss doing? Yu Jie didn't understand. In the past, the first miss was always delicate and gentle, as if she would be tired by walking. Today, she was really special. Ignore it. Let's go down the mountain. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said nothing. There were really a lot of secrets in the Yuhui nunnery. It was appalling to raise a son of the late emperor as a girl here. It was really not a big deal to have a sex party in the backyard. She didn't want to be killed in such a place because of what she saw. She didn't forget that Xiao Yanru's words just now were obviously pointing at something and making her suspicious. Now Xiao Yanru climbed up the mountain in front of her, which was not in line with her usual behavior. No matter how she looked at it, it was full of mystery and hidden seduction. She cherished her life very much and wouldn't lose her life because of excessive curiosity. Do you want Qing to guard the place to go down the mountain? Yu Jie felt that there was something wrong and said worriedly. No. Xiao Wanru shook her head decisively and refused. Even if someone can come here, Qing can't guard it alone and may even expose Qing. What we have to do now is to go back and wait quietly and do nothing. After returning to the courtyard, Xiao Wanru went back to the silence room and burned incense to copy scriptures in the silence room for a whole day. In the middle of the day, she heard voices in the courtyard and even heard Xiao Yanru's voice asking questions, but Yu Jie refused. Everyone in the courtyard knew that once Xiao Wanru was chanting and copying scriptures, she couldn't be interrupted. Xiao Wanru kept copying until it was time for dinner. She put down the writing brush in her hand and looked at the scriptures in front of her. She touched her sore hands, walked to the door and asked Yu Jie to fetch water to wash her hands. Yu Jie had been waiting outside the door for a long time. Hearing Xiao Wanru's order, she hurriedly brought in the warm water and helped Xiao Wanru clean her hands. Chu Lu carried the food box from the kitchen, took out a plate of simple dishes, and then took out a basket of steamed rice with lotus leaf powder. She said with a smile, Miss, there are steamed rice with lotus leaf powder in the kitchen today. I've brought it for you. I heard that it's the food given by Commandery Prince Qing today. In order to thank the Yuhui nunnery for the rice, Commandery Prince Qing will perform religious rites in the Yuhui nunnery later. The steamed rice with lotus leaf powder was very fragrant. As soon as it was taken out, there was a strong smell of lotus leaves. It was just autumn, and the lotus leaves in many places were still very good. After being steamed, the taste was very good. Before eating, she felt that it was very appetizing. Commandery Prince Qing is really making a big fuss, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. After washing her hands, she sat down, picked up a small bowl of steamed rice with lotus leaf in the bowl that Chu Lu filled for her, smelled it, and found that it was really good. She put it in her mouth and tasted it. It was also good. Miss, I went to get it with Shuqi. Mint, but when I left, Shuqi was still there. She was asking the cook in Commandery Prince Qing's mansion how to make the lotus leaf rice. It seemed that first Miss liked it very much. It's like lotus leaf rice, Chu Lu said as she took away the remaining lotus leaf rice. This kind of sticky thing should not be eaten too much. A small bowl was enough, or it would cause indigestion. The cook of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion is still in the Yuhui nunnery? Xiao Wanru put down her chopsticks. Chapter 574. The Favor of a Meal? First, he took his biological mother away in a big way. Before the personnel of the Ministry of Justice left, he could inquire about it at the gate of the Yuhui nunnery. It could be seen that everyone knew it clearly. The royal family had always been cautious. Since he could inquire about it so casually, it could be seen that he did not harm anyone at all and even did not care whether others knew it or not. 1 second to remember, there was no pop-up window for free reading. As for the favor of a meal, it lasted for half a year. In the future, no matter which family came to the Yuhui nunnery, they would know Commandery Prince Qing's gratitude. Finally, there was a follow-up religious rite. Commandery Prince Qing naturally did not have the right to hold the religious rite for the late emperor. Therefore, this religious rite was definitely not the late emperor's. It was most likely to be a relative of Imperial noble consort Yu or her parents. He did this out of filial piety. No matter from which aspect, this was not only a good deed, but also an act of kindness and filial piety. One move after another, Commandery Prince Qing was really not an ordinary person. It seemed that he was unusual. This kind of thing originally had nothing to do with Xiao Wanru. She was just a weak girl in the backyard and couldn't care about this kind of thing. However, because it might be related to Chu Luchen, she inevitably paid more attention to it and asked Qing to go down the mountain to tell Chu Luchen what she had seen and heard today. It was not that she doubted Chu Luchen's means. It would not be difficult for him to find out these things if he wanted to. However, now the personnel of the Ministry of Justice slowly retreated, and it was inconvenient for him to go up the mountain, so it would be more convenient for him to investigate. Xiao Wanru would not forget that when she was about to come to the Yuhui nunnery, Chu Luchen had entrusted her with some things, but she had not done these things until now. Speaking of it, she felt guilty. Now that she had a chance to know something, she would naturally report it to Chu Luchen immediately. The S of the late emperor behind the high wall could not make any trouble now. The personnel of the Ministry of Justice had investigated again and again. Even if there were any tricks, they had found out clearly now. Qing left quickly and came back quickly. She only brought back a sentence from Chu Luchen. Prince said he got it. From now on, you don't have to worry about the affairs of the former emperor's S anymore. These words made Xiao Wanru breathe a sigh of relief. The guards on the other side of the high wall became more and more strict. If she showed a trace of interest, it would inevitably arouse people's suspicion. Occasionally when she passed by the side door and saw the nuns who followed her closely, she knew that the guards here were not as relaxed as before. It was the right thing to walk over without looking sideways. Qing brought another piece of news from the foot of the mountain, which made Xiao Wanru feel both expected and surprised. What had happened to Xiushui of Baiyun Taoist Temple was now related to Qi Rongji. It was said that the first Miss Qi knelt down and apologized to old madam with tears in front of an official who came to Duke Xing's mansion to inquire about this matter. She said that she also believed in the words of the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion by mistake, thought this Taoist priest was good, and then recommended him to old madam. If she hadn't said so, when the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery recommended this Taoist priest, old madam would not have agreed without hesitation. It was said that old madam was also very kind. She pulled Qi Rongji up and told her that it was her first time in the capital city and it was normal for her to be fooled by others. She also told her not to listen to others' nonsense in the future, let alone pass others' nonsense to the elders in the mansion, so as to make so many troubles. Madame of Duke Xing also repeatedly asked the official of the Ministry of Justice to forgive her for listening to hearsay, and also prepared a generous gift. With the departure of the official of the Ministry of Justice, this matter was spread out. Everyone said that this Miss Qi from Jiangzhou was extremely unpresentable. She didn't have the appearance of a miss from an aristocratic family at all. She turned out to be a talkative person. Not only was she talkative, but she also violated the morality, appearance, and speech of a woman. Like a talkative servant, she actually spread nonsense and made such a big trouble. She felt ashamed to face Madame of Duke Xing, who had taken her as her adopted daughter, and even more ashamed to face Madame of Duke Xing's careful education in the past 2 years. Their words were extremely unpleasant. They all implied that Qi Rongji was not good in nature and was not a well-educated woman. Even though Madame of Duke Xing had tried her best to teach her, she was still a mischievous woman. Aristocratic families paid great attention to the appearance of women. If Qi Rongji had such a reputation, it would be difficult for her to get married. Miss Duke Qi's mansion has put all the blame on the first Miss Qi and first Miss Qin. They are really cunning. After hearing Qing'er's words, Yu Jie curled her lips and said sarcastically. She had fought with Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru, so she didn't have a good impression of them. Even though they seemed to be wronged now, Yu Jie felt that she would not sympathize with them. After all, they had asked for it. At that time, in order to get close to Madame of Duke Xing, the first Miss Qi had schemed against her miss a lot. After that, she had also acted high and mighty. As for the first Miss Qin, she and Madame D had been trying to harm Miss in every way. If it were not for Miss's intelligence, she might have been killed by their schemes. Madame of Duke Xing, I am afraid that you have underestimated Duke Yong's mansion. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, and the smile on her lips was very shallow. Although Duke Yong's mansion was not as powerful as Duke Xing's mansion, and it seemed to be attached to Duke Xing's mansion in the last life, it was an aristocratic family after all. Moreover, considering what had happened to Heng Rui before, she felt that Duke Yong's mansion was not as simple as it seemed. In the last life, the matter of Baiyun Taoist Temple did not cause any harm to Duke Yong's mansion. If Duke Xing's mansion wanted to push all the blame to Duke Yong's mansion, it would be counterproductive. But she didn't know which master was behind the two mansions. If they were the same master, it would be a coincidence. As expected, after a few days, there was news from outside that the young Madame of Duke Yong's mansion had been wronged. She was so angry that she surrendered. Fortunately, the servant girl was clever and saved her. The people of Duke Yong's mansion were also angry. In front of the officials of the Ministry of Justice who were investigating the matter, they wanted to confront Qi Rongji and ask when and where their young madam met her and said that. As for the matter of Xiaoshui of Baiyun Taoist Temple, Duke Yong's mansion also openly admitted in front of everyone that they were actually deceived by this Taoist priest. As for recommending Xiaoshui to other families later, they just said it according to their own intentions. As for whether other families invited Xiaoshui or not, it had nothing to do with them. And the reason why they believed it was that the previous Duke Yong was deceived. Now that the old Duke Yong had passed away, they couldn't make a dead person to ruin his reputation. Since this matter was spread after being deceived by the old Duke Yong, and later because the current old Madame of Duke Yong didn't believe it, she didn't invite Xiaoshui Taoist priest often, even less than some aristocratic families. Now that Xiaoshui Taoist priest was in trouble, it had nothing to do with their mansion. The officials of the Ministry of Justice investigated it and found that Xiaoshui Taoist priest rarely went to Duke Yong's mansion. Except for the first time because of the old Duke Yong, he almost never went there. After Qin Yuru got married, she didn't go there even once. Because Qin Yuru got married, it could be said that she got married with a bad reputation. After she got married, she almost never saw anyone, let alone meet Qi Rongji and lure Qi Rongji to talk about Xiaoshui Taoist priest. Duke Yong's mansion took a strong attitude and asked Qi Rongji to confront Qin Yuru face to face, but Duke Xing's mansion was unwilling to do so. They said that as an unmarried miss, no matter whether she was the daughter of Duke Xing's mansion or not, she should be raised in Duke Xing's mansion. They couldn't let her reputation be ruined, so they just said that this matter was over and they didn't want to pursue it anymore. They could just pretend that Qi Rongji heard it wrong. Now it was hard to explain. One said that it was the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion who said it, but Qin Yuru hung herself, which made people feel that she was really wronged. But if she didn't say it, how could Qi Rongji know it? How long had she been in the capital city? She had never met this evil Taoist priest Xiushui. Could he be a member of Duke Xing's mansion? Thinking of this, the topic came back. Anyway, this matter was a mess now. Duke Yong's mansion and Duke Xing's mansion both suspected it, and each of them said it with certainty. The Ministry of Justice sent people to both mansions, but they couldn't find out the truth. They originally wanted to take this first Miss Qi back, but this first Miss Qi also committed suicide. After the people of Duke Xing's mansion saved her, they didn't allow the people of the Ministry of Justice to question this first Miss Qi anymore. Otherwise, it would be bad for Duke Yong's mansion. After hearing that Madam of Duke Xing specially went to Duke Yong's mansion stopped asking the Ministry of Justice to take her back. The rumors outside were still unpleasant, but this time they mainly revolved around Madam of Duke Xing and old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. They all thought that if someone made this first Miss Qi lie, it must be one of them. But now Duke Yong's mansion didn't pursue this matter, so people could only treat it as a mess. This first Miss Qi was associated with the shameless first Miss Qin, so it could be seen that they also had a bad moral standing. After getting the news, Xiao Wanru was in a good mood and specially ate half a bowl of rice. In the last life, Duke Xing's mansion and Duke Yong's mansion were closely associated with each other, and they were the two mountains that suppressed her. Now such a thing happened. Even if she didn't know what kind of relationship they had, she would definitely have a grudge against them, and they couldn't be as close as in the last life. As for the fallout between Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru, she was also happy to see it. With these things, it would be very difficult for Qi Rongji to find a good marriage. At that time, Qi Rongji took a fancy to Duke Xing's mansion and tried every means to get close to Madam of Duke Xing. Didn't she want a good marriage? Now, even with Duke Xing's mansion behind her, it was difficult for aristocratic families to take a fancy to her. The reason why Qin Yuru, who also had a bad reputation, got married was that it was her maternal grandfather's family. Now, with Qi Rongji's heart, she was afraid that the whole Duke Xing's mansion would hate her. This was good. The biggest difference between Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru was that Qi Rongji was not only vicious herself, but also had an equally vicious and unscrupulous brother. With such a move, she didn't know how Qi Tianyu could cooperate with Xiao Yanru perfectly. Previously, if there had been an agreement between them, how could Qi Tianyu protect Xiao Yanru to leave under such circumstances? Qi Tianyu was a poisonous scorpion, while Xiao Yanru was a beautiful snake. Chapter 575. How dare you ask me to explain it? How dare you? Xiao Yanru threw the letter in her hand fiercely and said angrily, "First miss, how dare you ask me to explain it? Do you have the face to do so?" Shuqi carefully picked up the letter on the ground and said angrily. The letter was sent to the mountain in the name of Miss Qi, but in fact, it was sent by Miss Qi's brother. As the first Mrs. Henchman, Shuqi certainly knew the real source of the letter. Tell him to behave himself. If he is unwilling to work for me, forget it. Xiao Yanru said with a sneer and sat down heavily in the chair. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Who is she? Who is Qi Rongji? How could she compare with her? How dare she ask her to explain for Qi Rongji? She didn't know who she was and did not have the face to do so. Miss, just say that? Shuqi looked at the blank paper on the desk and said uneasily. Yes, just say that to the servant girl who sent the letter, Xiao Yanru said angrily. First miss, this is not a good idea. If the servant girl finds out something, it will be bad if it is spread out. Miss, you have such a noble reputation. How can you be involved in this kind of trouble? Shuqi advised. Xiao Yanru looked a little better. She stood up, walked to the desk, picked up the writing brush and wrote it down. After writing it, she looked at it carefully and said coldly, "Tell the servant girl that I will think about it. If possible, I hope I won't hurt her." In fact, the servant girl was not Chi Rongji's servant, but Chi Tianyu's. "Yes, First Mississippi. I understand. I will hint you not to hurt the first Miss Chi and protect her if possible. But now you are on the mountain and are stopped by the 5th Mississippi. Even if you want to, you can't do it. So you can only ask Madam to deal with it." Shuchi said cleverly. Since the servant girl came in the name of Miss Chi, she regarded the servant girl as Miss Chi. In fact, the Miss Chi in the mansion was useless in front of her master. She didn't dare to do anything when her master asked her to do it, let alone write a letter to ask for help. Seeing that her servant girl liked her very much, Xiao Yinru nodded and looked calm. She had not ascended to that position yet, and Chi Tianyu was a very good helper. At this time, she did not want to offend Chi Tianyu. Xiao Yinru was also very angry that her grandma chose Chi Rongji as a scapegoat. She thought that her grandma was really muddle-headed. There were so many children in the 3rd branch, and she could choose any one of them. When she ascended to a high position in the future, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would be extremely noble. Why would she care about the children of the 3rd branch? Moreover, if the children of Xing country's mansion came forward, they would be more credible than Chi Rongji. But now, they failed to get Duke Yong's mansion and made a mess. Both her mother and grandmother were too old and didn't know how to be decisive. Shuchi walked to the desk. Seeing that the paper was dry, she folded it, took out a blank envelope, and put it in. Then she hesitated for a moment and said, "Miss, should we let young Master Chi's 2 old maids go back?" "Don't let them go back. Since Chi Tianyu didn't say anything, don't let them go back for the time being. Anyway, they are just 2 ordinary old maids who came to offer incense." Xiao Yinru shook her head. The 2 old maids were not used before, but it didn't mean that they would not be used in the future. Xiao Wanru was always a source of trouble. It would be best to deal with her on the mountain. "Yes, I'll arrange it later," Shuchi said with a frown. The 2 old maids had come to her before and said that they would go down the mountain if there was nothing else. She didn't know whether it was because they got the news about young Master Chi or they really couldn't stay here any longer. It would be great if the 5th Miss could be deceived to climb up the mountain path last time. The 2 old maids were hiding on the mountain path, waiting for the 5th Miss to come up, so that they could find a place to rush down and knock the 5th Miss down the mountain. As for the servant girl following them, so many people couldn't deal with an ordinary servant girl, right? However, she didn't expect that the 1st Miss didn't lead the 5th Miss up the mountain, which wasted the 1st Miss's time. Now the matter about the 1st Miss Chi had happened. Shuchi was afraid that there would be a rift between young Master Chi and her master. After seeing the servant girl sent by Chi Tianyu, she deliberately said a lot of caring words to her master, indicating that her master wanted to help Miss Chi very much. However, the matter had been exposed, so it was useless to deny it. However, the 1st Miss would immediately write a letter back and ask Madam to take care of the 1st Miss Chi. The reason why she couldn't leave here was the 5th Mississippi. The 5th Miss not only copied the scriptures for her parents, but also forced the 1st Miss to do so. If the 1st Miss refused to do so, she would say that the 1st Miss was not filial. She implicitly told the servant girl these words, and the servant girl who delivered the letter nodded repeatedly. She felt that the 5th Miss Xiao was really not a good person, but she also felt that the 1st Miss Xiao was really good to her master. After going back, she must tell the 1st young master how good the 1st Miss was. After asking the servant girl sent by Chi Tianyu to leave, Shuchi went to find the 2 old maids sent by Chi Tianyu. She specially gave them 2 purses and said that she would stay for a while longer. If she couldn't do anything about it, she could let it go. She said that her master was almost bullied to death by the vicious 5th Mississippi. As a personal servant girl, she couldn't stand it anymore and asked them for help. She said that her master was almost bullied to death by the vicious 5th Mississippi. After taking the purses, the 2 old maids pinched them and felt that they were very rich. They immediately smiled and said that the 1st young master meant that they could stay on the mountain for at most half a month. If they stayed longer, they were afraid that the 1st young master would say something. Shuqi expressed her gratitude profusely and then hurried back to report to Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru was very satisfied with this. Everything was done very carefully. Even if there was a small mistake, it would not affect her. No matter in front of others or behind others, she was the unparalleled, dignified and beautiful first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Hearing that Xiao Wanru stopped chanting scriptures and seeing the two servant girls go in and out, she knew that Xiao Wanru was not cultivating at this time. So she packed up a few copies of Buddhist scriptures with Shuqi and came to the silence room. She had plenty of ways to deal with Xiao Wanru, so she was not afraid that Xiao Wanru would fall into her trap. In addition to some things that everyone knew, she also knew some other things when Commandery Prince Qing came up the mountain, such as how many days he would stay on the mountain. At the door of the room, Chu Le happened to come out. Seeing Xiao Yanru, she bowed sideways to her. "Is your master resting?" Xiao Yanru stood at the door and asked with a smile. When she looked up, she saw Xiao Wanru sitting on the mat and reading a Buddhist scripture. Hearing her voice, Xiao Wanru raised her head with a leisurely smile, as if she was not surprised by her coming. "Big sister, have you finished copying the Buddhist scriptures?" Xiao Wanru asked. Xiao Yanru walked over, sat down on the mat, gently pinched her right hand, and said with a smile, "Take a break. After copying for so many days, my hands are very easy to get sore. I don't know if it's because I wrote fewer characters in the past." Shuqi put a few copies of Buddhist scriptures copied by Xiao Yanru on the table between them and said with a smile, "Fifth Miss, these are copied by my master in the past few days. First Miss's hands are so sore that she can't eat." "Thank you, big sister." Xiao Wanru stood up and bowed to her respectfully with a serious face. "We're sisters, so don't be so polite." Xiao Yanru said with a soft smile, reached out and asked her to sit down. "Can I see the Buddhist scriptures copied by you, fifth sister?" Xiao Wanru nodded. Yujie took out a few volumes of scriptures from behind the screen. At the sight of them, Xiao Yanru knew that Xiao Wanru didn't lie. Xiao Yanru had been copying scriptures and chanting scriptures here. Xiao Yanru couldn't help frowning. Xiao Yanru looked at the scriptures that Xiao Wanru had been reading just now and found that the scriptures had been closed. She glanced at something strange out of the corner of her eyes and couldn't help taking another look at it. At this glance, she found something strange. The cover of the scriptures seemed to be too big, which seemed to be different from the inside. "Fifth sister, what scriptures are you reading? Can I have a look?" Xiao Yanru didn't look at the scriptures in her hand, but reached for the book beside Xiao Wanru's hand and said with a leisurely smile, as if she really just wanted to have a look. Xiao Wanru moved her hand, and the book fell into her hand. Then she turned her head and handed it to Yujie, saying, "Big sister, I'm very modest. I'm still reading this scripture and need to make a copy. Can I give it to you after I finish copying it?" "Of course. Fifth sister, give it to me after you finish copying it. Since you read it so carefully, it should be good. I'll also make a copy." Xiao Yanru said indifferently and withdrew her hand, as if she had just asked casually just now. However, she sneered in her heart. She was sure that Xiao Wanru was reading some scripts. It was really improper for Xiao Wanru to read some scripts instead of observing mourning for her parents on the mountain. It would also make others feel that her so-called filial piety was superficial and very hypocritical. She had to ask someone to keep an eye on these servant girls to find new scripts at the foot of the mountain. It would be better to catch them on the spot. Needless to say, there must be many scripts hidden in this room. Of course. Xiao Wanru nodded with a smile. "Fifth sister, how is your hand? Did you use the ointment before?" Xiao Yanru said as she stretched out her hand, which was smooth as if it had never been scalded. It could be seen that the ointment was really effective. Xiao Wanru's hand was still tied with a handkerchief. She subconsciously reached out to touch it and frowned, saying, "My injury hasn't healed yet." How could it be? Could it be that the ointment in the palace mainly treats burns? Xiao Yanru also looked surprised. She reached out to untie the handkerchief on Xiao Wanru's hand to see the wound. However, her hand was blocked by Xiao Wanru's other hand. Xiao Wanru smiled a little reluctantly and said, "It should be healed soon. Big sister, don't worry. It's not a big deal. It's just that it hasn't healed yet." It's much slower than the burn on your hand. Since it's getting better, don't worry. Just use it slowly. Maybe it's not as effective as the one for burns. Xiao Yanru comforted her softly. Maybe. Xiao Wanru looked a little hesitant and seemed to doubt the effect of the ointment. But when she saw the back of Xiao Yanru's white and tender hand, her doubt was not so strong. After chatting for a while, Xiao Yanru asked to leave. When she walked to the door, she suddenly looked back as if she had just thought of something and said, "Fifth sister, there is a maple forest in the Yuhui nunnery. It's the best time to see it now. Shall we go to see it tomorrow?" Chapter 576. Maple Forest? Xiao Wanru blinked her long eyelashes and didn't think of it for a moment. In fact, it's not called Maple Forest. It's just a place where maple trees are planted. In autumn, the red leaves are like fire, which is extremely beautiful. It's not open to the public, so people outside don't know about it. Even Fifth Sister, who has lived on the mountain for a period of time, doesn't know about it. Xiao Yanru introduced with a smile. Then why is it open to the public now? Xiao Wanru was really not very clear about the affairs of the Yuhui nunnery. On the one hand, she went up the mountain to avoid Duke Xing's mansion, and on the other hand, she sincerely observed mourning for her parents. As for the affairs outside, if she had nothing to do with it, she rarely asked about it. In fact, this maple forest is also close to the high wall. It's between the back mountain and the high wall. Originally, because it's close to the high wall and the back mountain, the Yuhui nunnery didn't set up guards there, so it was also blocked. Now there are guards in that area, so the maple forest is isolated. Xiao Yanru said with a soft smile, "I saw it from a distance when I was on the mountain and thought it was very good. I also inquired about it from the masters of the Yuhui nunnery and thought it was good. So I want to go and have a look with you. It may be more beautiful when it's closer." "Okay, let's go and have a look together tomorrow." Xiao Wanru nodded and agreed, looking a little curious. Xiao Yanru left with Shuqi with a smile. After walking out of the door, she told Shuqi, "Go and prepare a set of black clothes for me." "Miss, your clothes are very plain." Shuqi looked at Xiao Wanru's light blue dress and said in confusion. Xiao Yanru ignored her and just hooked her hand at her. Looking around in the corridor to make sure there was no one around, she lowered her voice and said, "Tomorrow, send 2 old maids there." Xiao Yanru, who was looking forward to going to the maple forest, came over after breakfast early the next morning. "Big sister, hey?" Xiao Wanru was still eating. She put down the bowl in her hand and looked Xiao Yanru up and down in astonishment. In the past, although Xiao Yanru also lived in the nunnery and wore plain clothes, she had never worn the same black clothes as Xiao Wanru. But today, she dressed almost exactly the same as Xiao Wanru. There was a simple bamboo hairpin on her head and she was dressed in a simple black robe. Although she was slightly taller than Xiao Wanru, no one could tell the difference if they didn't stand close to each other at this distance. Fifth sister has been wearing black clothes to observe mourning for eldest uncle and eldest aunt. Today, I will also wear the same clothes as fifth sister to show my sincerity. Xiao Yanru pulled her black robe and said with a smile, "Fifth sister, can we go now?" Her words were really interesting. At this moment, even if Xiao Wanru wanted to change her clothes, she couldn't. After all, this was her sincerity for her parents, which was filial piety. How could this filial piety be changed? It seemed that Xiao Yanru's intention to deal with her today had something to do with this dress. Thinking of the news that Qing had inquired about yesterday, a trace of gloominess flashed across her eyes, but she didn't show it on her face. She said lightly, "Big sister, please wait for a moment. I'll leave after I finish tying up my hair." "I'll wait for you, fifth sister." Xiao Yanru agreed with a good temper, sat down on the mat, and watched Yujie tie up Xiao Wanru's hair. This was a small silence room. It was used for meditation, so everything was simple. There was no dressing table for Xiao Wanru. Yujie just took out a box from inside, in which there were dressing items and a few small and simple pieces of jewelry. There were a few hairpins in the box, all of which looked simple. There was a bamboo hairpin similar to the one on Xiao Yanru's head, which she usually used in the past, but there were also a few jade hairpins. Yujia put them in front of her, and Xiao Wanru casually picked up a jade hairpin and handed it to Yujia. Knowing that she meant to use this hairpin, Yujia nodded, put down the box, took out a comb from inside, and carefully combed Xiao Wanru's long hair. Fifth sister, why don't you use the bamboo hairpin that you usually use? I originally wanted to use a hairpin similar to yours. Xiao Yanru picked up the tea served by Chu Lu and asked with interest. She glanced at the jade hairpin and found that it was really an extremely ordinary one. She had prepared a few such ordinary hairpins when she went up the mountain. Of course, she couldn't wear jewelry that was too beautiful and gorgeous in the nunnery. This kind of hairpin, which looked a little different but had a simple style, was very necessary. Then use the same bamboo hairpin as big sisters. Xiao Wanru casually smiled at Xiao Yanru and ordered Yujia. Fifth miss, I have reported to you yesterday that there is a gap on the side of this bamboo hairpin. You can't wear it until I make the gap round. Otherwise, it will hurt you. Yujia said with a smile. Oh right, I forgot. Then I don't need this bamboo hairpin. Xiao Wanru said with a look of sudden realization. She reached out and patted her white and tender forehead gently. Since it's broken, of course you can't wear it again. If this kind of bamboo hairpin can't be melted, it will hurt your head and hurt your hair. Xiao Yanru also looked concerned and advised. After that, she took out a book from under the table and casually flipped through a few pages. It was a scripture, but Xiao Yanru could be sure that it was not the one she saw yesterday. The cover was neither too big nor too small, and it was just right for the scripture. However, it was originally designed to match the scripture, not the one she had seen with the cover of the scripture before. Xiao Wanru was smart. She was afraid that she would come over to look through it today, so she deliberately took a real scripture and put it here. But this showed that she had a guilty conscience. Xiao Wanru's hair was tied up in the simplest way. After Yujia skillfully tied up her hair, she pinned the jade hairpin she had chosen before and fixed her hairstyle. Then she looked at the simple jewelry in the box and said, Miss, it's rare for you to go out to enjoy the scenery. Do you want to wear earrings? This string of pearls looks beautiful too. As she said, she took out a pair of pearl earrings from the jewelry box and put them in front of Xiao Wanru's ears. Yujia, the fifth miss, is still wearing black clothes. Shuqi couldn't help reminding her. What's wrong with black clothes? These earrings don't look obvious. They are just a pair of ordinary earrings. Besides, they are white, beautiful and inconspicuous. Our miss has been on the mountain for almost 3 years, but she has never worn earrings. Now that she is going to enjoy the scenery, she has to wear them. Yujia shook the earrings in her hand in confusion and handed them to Xiao Wanru. The earrings were indeed the simplest kind. Under the long chain, 3 pearls hung down. They were neither too big nor too small, but they were very glossy. Together with the long chain, they were simple yet elegant, very beautiful and very colorful. Just this pair of earrings was already very eye-catching. Fifth sister, where did you get this pair of earrings? They are so beautiful. Xiao Yanru couldn't help reaching out and saying. Since she had reached out, Yujia had to put the earrings in her hand and watch her take the pair of pearl earrings. I don't know. Maybe they were given by my grandma. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Miss, you are right. These earrings were indeed given to you by Great Elder Princess when you came up the mountain last time. She said that you have been observing mourning for the heir of a duke and infanta for almost 3 years, so you can wear some simple jewelry. This pair was sent to you at that time. Chu Lu introduced with a smile. Xiao Yanru shook the earrings in her hand with appreciation in her eyes and said implicitly, they are so beautiful. These earrings look simple, but they are actually very luxurious. Even if you attend a banquet in the capital city, you can still wear them. If you stand among the misses from aristocratic families, these earrings will really attract people's attention at a glance. Great Elder Princess really dotes on you, fifth sister. Yujia, you'd better not wear these earrings. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said to Yujia, I'm observing mourning now. It's not good for me to wear such conspicuous and luxurious earrings. Well then I'll wear this pair. Yujie said aggrievedly and reached out to take out another pair of earrings from the box. Compared with the earrings just now, this pair of earrings was really inconspicuous. They were also a pair of pearl earrings, but there was only one pearl and one earring. If she lowered her head a little, no one would notice that she was still wearing the earrings. Fifth sister, isn't it too simple? You'd better wear this pair. Since it's great elder princess's kind intention, we can't let her pay for it in vain. Xiao Yinru gave the long pearl earrings to Xiao Wenru and persuaded her with a smile. No, thank you, big sister. I'm still in the mourning period, so I should focus on simplicity. If it weren't for today, I wouldn't wear these earrings if I were to accompany everyone to enjoy the scenery. Xiao Wenru casually threw the earrings in her hand into the box in Yujie's hand and refused with a smile. Seeing that Xiao Wenru insisted, Yujie had no choice but to put on the pair of extremely simple and almost invisible earrings for Xiao Wenru. After combing her earrings, they were really inconspicuous. If one didn't look carefully, no one would notice that she was wearing a pair of pearl earrings. Xiao Wenru was extremely satisfied, and of course, so was Xiao Yinru. No one noticed that Xiao Wenru held a hairpin in her hand when she took the earrings just now. At this time, she put it in her sleeve. She didn't know what it would be like to enjoy the scenery outside, so it was better to bring a sharp hairpin just in case. After Xiao Wenru finished packing, the two of them walked out of the courtyard together, leaving Chu Lu and Qing behind and taking Yujie with her. Before leaving, the two of them deliberately put on the same veil. In this way, if the two of them didn't stand together and compare them carefully, no one would be able to tell who was who. When they reached the door, Xiao Yinru suddenly stopped and said to Xiao Wenru modestly, "Fifth sister, wait a moment. I left something behind and will be back soon." "Big sister, help yourself." Xiao Wenru nodded and stepped out of the courtyard with a smile. Yujie followed her closely and waited outside the courtyard with Yujie. Xiao Yinru and Shuqi went back in a hurry and came back soon. The two of them walked forward hand in hand. It was still early, and they didn't meet anyone along the way. However, when they arrived at the maple forest, Xiao Wenru found that there were a lot of people here, and many of them came early. In addition to some women, there were also a lot of men. She looked around and found that this was also the depths of the Yuhui nunnery. In the past, few men entered the depths of the Yuhui nunnery. Was there anything different about this maple forest? "Big sister, why are there so many men here?" Xiao Wenru stopped and asked in astonishment. Chapter 577. It was autumn, and the maple forest was elegant. Chu Qing, Commandery Prince Qing, stood under a maple tree with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the mountains in the depths of the maple forest. The scenery of the mountains reflected the red leaves. As the wind blew, the leaves rustled. It was a leisurely beautiful scenery. Compared to the flowers in spring, it made people feel more tranquil and comfortable. The aggressive colors made people feel happy at first glance, but the red color of the maple leaves made people feel more at peace. Chu Qing had been standing under the tree for a long time. Looking at the back of the mountain from here, compared with looking over from a small hill inside the high wall in the past, his line of sight was wider, he could see more and he could think more. The young and handsome noble boy stood quietly under the maple tree. The falling maple leaves were as red as fire and fell on his shoulders from time to time, making people feel that he and the maple forest were like the beautiful scenery in a painting. Many young women who were passing by couldn't help but stop in their tracks and sneak peeks at this handsome young man. One by one, they blushed and left with light footsteps. Not long after, they turned back here. The mountain road was full of twists and turns, but they didn't know that what it turned the most was the human heart. "Your Highness, there are two misses in black clothes and veils coming over." A guard appeared behind him and reported. "Two misses?" Chu Qing, who had been calm, was slightly moved. "Yes, it's two misses. Both in black clothes. They entered the maple forest one after the other." The guard nodded. Although the two misses were not far from each other, they didn't go the same way. One entered the maple forest from the left entrance, while the other entered the maple forest from the right entrance. "Where's the hair ornament?" Chu Qing spoke indifferently while his expression remained unchanged. It was as if such an accident was within his expectations. After being raised in the nunnery for so many years, he'd been trained to be calm. No matter how shocked he was in his heart, he was still able to maintain a calm and composed expression. Both of them are wearing a simple jade hairpin. I can't see the difference. The guard observed very carefully. After thinking for a while after hearing Chu Qing's question, he said affirmatively. Are they wearing a veil or a curtain hat? Chu Qing said with a natural look. He reached out to catch a falling maple leaf, pinched the handle of the maple leaf in his hand, and turned it. They are both wearing a veil, the guard said. Which one looks more beautiful? Chu Qing said casually. Well, I think it should be the one in front. Although they are both wearing veils, the woman in front has more beautiful eyes. It seems. The guard couldn't think of how to describe it. The two pairs of eyes that were exposed were actually extremely beautiful. It could be seen that both of them were extremely beautiful women. However, the eyes of the woman in front looked very charming at first glance, causing people to feel a sense of amazement at first glance. However, upon closer inspection, one would feel that her eyes were gentle and pure, like the artistic conception of a gurgling stream. It was quick-witted and natural, yet it also moved people's hearts. The eyes of the woman in the back were also extremely beautiful. One could tell that she was a beauty at first glance. She also had very beautiful eyes. Was Chu. She was also had the Chus. However, there and was and of the beauty and of Qing and woman and let's go and meet the lady behind us. Chu Qing smiled. He had made up his mind and said playfully. Everyone knew that the most beautiful woman in the capital city was the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion, so the relatively less beautiful one should be the fifth Mississippi. Thinking that the fifth miss would send a note to them in private, a trace of interest flashed across their eyes. If and great elder princess had not been behind the fifth miss, he would not have come to see her. He had heard that the fifth miss was not a good person. Not only was she capricious, but she also bullied others. She was really not a good person. However, Ruan Great Elder Princess was behind her, so Chu Qing had to pay attention to her. He wanted to see why the fifth miss invited him to the maple leaf forest. It seemed that the 3 years of mourning was just a smokescreen. The fifth miss had been in the Yuhui nunnery for so long, but Chu Qing had never met her. However, although he had never met her, he had someone who had met the fifth Miss Xiao. After hearing all kinds of things about the fifth Miss Xiao, Chu Qing would not have any good impression of the fifth Miss Xiao, not to mention that she was meeting a man in private now. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yenru did enter the forest one after another, and they also made an appointment to enter from different directions. The reason for this was also Xiao Yenru's idea. At first, the two of them went out together, but after a short walk, Xiao Yenru said that she would enter the maple leaf forest separately with Xiao Wanru. It was said that there were many paths in the maple leaf forest, and she wanted to see how long they would take to meet each other. After that, Xiao Yenru said that she had sprained her ankle and asked Xiao Wanru to go a few steps first. She could walk slowly with Shuqi. Xiao Wanru thought that the two of them would take different paths to the entrance of the forest. Seeing that it was difficult for Xiao Yenru to catch up with her even if she slowed down, Xiao Yenru couldn't keep up with her, so she followed Xiao Yenru's idea and entered a far entrance without waiting for her, leaving the near entrance to Xiao Yenru. Miss, this maple leaf forest is really big and beautiful. When I was in Jiangzhou, there was also a maple leaf forest in the Jingxi Monastery, but it was not as big as this one. How big is the Yuhui nunnery on earth? This forest seems to be very far. Yujia said in surprise as she walked. They saw a lot of people at the intersection, but when they entered the maple leaf forest, they didn't see many people. Maybe it was because of the wide area. Along the way, they only saw a few girls in front of them from a distance, but none of them passed by them. It could be seen that there were many paths in the forest. Xiao Wanru stood still, stretched out her white and tender hand, looked at a red leaf falling on her palm and said, "If we turn to the exit of Xiao Yenru from here now, it should not be far, right?" They had just come in from the entrance and walked less than 100 meters, so it should not be too far. If they crossed directly, it would be even closer. "Miss, let me take you there." Yujia nodded. She grew up in the mountains, so she had a good knowledge of the direction in the dense forest since she was a child. She was not afraid of getting lost. After looking around for a while and finding the right direction, she led Xiao Wanru to cross. She didn't take Xiao Wanru on a road that was completely level with the intersection just now, but slightly inclined in, so that she could catch up with Xiao Yanru instead of thinking that Xiao Yanru was waiting at the same place as them. Xiao Yanru must be going inside. The maple leaves were very dense. If they didn't make a sound within a few steps, they could hardly see anyone. Without Yujia leading the way, Xiao Wanru felt that she would definitely get lost on this road. The two of them didn't speak and just walked quietly. Occasionally, they could hear others' voices, but they avoided them quietly. "Miss, the first miss is sitting there for a rest." Yujia, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and said in a low voice. It was a very obvious path, and there was a pavilion on the side of the path. Xiao Yanru was sitting in the pavilion with Shuqi to rest. They were far away, so they could only see but not hear what Xiao Yanru and Shuqi were talking about. It seemed that Xiao Yanru was not in a hurry. "Miss, is the first miss really injured or not?" Yujia asked in confusion. Shouldn't she go back if she is injured? Is she going to stay like this? From this point of view, Yujia felt that the first miss's so-called sprained ankle was actually very unreasonable. "Let's wait and see," Xiao Wanru said with a smile. She put down the leaf in her hand, picked up a redder leaf from the ground, pinched it in her hand, and then squatted down. There happened to be a small stream on her side. The mottled sunlight shone through the tree shadows, making the stream glitter. A maple leaf fell at the bottom of the stream, making the stream ruddy and distinctive. There was a big stone on the side of the stream. Xiao Wanru squatted beside the stone and put the maple leaf in her hand into the water. The water was cool, not only clear, but also very comfortable. The red leaf first floated up and was soaked in water. When it fell on her palm, it was a little smooth, and her soft skin was also dyed red by the light of the red leaf through the stream. Yujia also squatted beside her. The stone was very good. It not only blocked their figures, but also could be seen clearly when she tilted her head. It was a good place. Seeing Xiao Wanru playing with the water with her hand, Yujia couldn't help putting her hand into the cool stream, but her attention was still on the pavilion, paying attention to the first Miss Xiao's movements. Xiao Yanru sat in the pavilion and seemed to be unwilling to leave. Shuqi even took out a pot of tea and a cup from the bag she carried with her. She was well prepared. After pouring a cup of tea for Xiao Yanru, she handed the cup to Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru took the tea and took a sip unhurriedly, looking unhurried. "Miss, someone is passing by." Suddenly, a tall and straight figure appeared in Yujia's sight and immediately reminded Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru put down the water in her hand, looked back in astonishment, and also saw the figure of the man. She blinked her watery eyes, squatted down, turned around, and looked at the man. Was this the man whom Xiao Yanru had invited? Since Xiao Yanru had made an appointment, why did she bring her here? Did she want to cover for herself? With Xiao Yanru's temperament, this explanation didn't make sense at all. Or did she really meet this man by chance and not arranged by Xiao Yanru? Xiao Wanru had just appeared, so she couldn't see clearly what was going on. Xiao Wanru calmly pinched the red leaf in her hand, tilted her head slightly, and focused her attention on Xiao Yanru. There was something fishy going on today, and it must be Xiao Yanru who was behind this. She just didn't know what Xiao Yanru was up to. The man had his back to them, so they couldn't see his face. However, the man bowed to Xiao Yanru in the pavilion, seeming to be very particular about etiquette and didn't go in immediately. Xiao Yanru suddenly stood up, looking very surprised. Obviously, she didn't expect that the man would come to her. Although she couldn't see her expression, she could tell from her expression that something was wrong. Was it really not arranged by Xiao Yanru? Otherwise, how could Xiao Yanru be so calm when there was no one around? Was it an accident? She really didn't believe it. Chapter 578. Chu Qing walked into the pavilion slowly with a servant beside him. When he saw Xiao Yanru sitting there, he asked softly, "Miss, may I have a cup of tea?" He said it very politely. When a gentle and elegant child met an elegant and pretty girl by chance, he behaved in a very decent manner and appearance. Xiao Yanru frowned. She recognized Chu Qing. However, she felt that Chu Qing shouldn't appear in front of her at this time. At this time, Chu Qing should be looking for Xiao Wanru. Could it be that he hadn't found Xiao Wanru yet? "Shuqi, do you have a cup?" Xiao Yanru glanced at Chu Qing calmly and said. She also wanted to ask what this situation meant. Shuqi understood, took out another cup from her bag, poured a cup of tea, and respectfully handed it to Chu Qing. Chu Qing smiled slightly, took it, took 2 sips, and then looked at Xiao Yanru with a smile and said, "Miss, I wonder which mansion you come from. I'm sorry to bother you today. I'll send you a tea set in the future to thank you for the tea you drank today." He meant that he had drunk Xiao Yanru's tea and wanted to thank her. Xiao Yanru stood up, bowed sideways, and said, "Child, you're too polite. It's just a cup of tea. It's nothing. It's just a cup of tea for you, but it's more than a cup of tea for me. Miss, you should give me a chance to thank your mansion," Chu Qing said with an increasingly gentle and elegant smile. Holding the tea in his hand, he didn't sit opposite Xiao Yanru politely. Instead, he stayed far away from her and still stood outside the pavilion, looking both polite and well-behaved. At first glance, people could tell that he was a gentleman who didn't bully others and a talented and good-looking child who was brought up by an aristocratic family. Compared with those foppish playboys who couldn't move at the sight of women, he was much better. But even so, he sounded a little amiable. After looking up at Xiao Yanru, he lowered his head with a slight blush on his face, which made his previous words have a different meaning. But he didn't hate it. No miss from an aristocratic family would hate this kind of extremely implicit and well-behaved behavior. He was so well-behaved that he didn't even step into the pavilion, for fear of ruining the reputation of the miss in the pavilion. He's really good at pretending. Yujia couldn't hear their conversation, but she felt that they were better at pretending than each other, so she couldn't help but say in a low voice. Needless to say, her first miss seemed to be kind, dignified and decent. She was meticulous at all times, but in fact, she was evil and vicious. As long as she had a chance, she would take advantage of her first Mississippi. Now Yujia could see clearly that this first miss might be more evil and vicious than the former first Miss Chin. However, this skin looked much kinder and had a good reputation. It was completely incomparable to the previous young Miss Chin. She didn't say that Xiao Yanru, who was much better than the Miss Chin, so Wanru without saying she, Xiao Wanru Chin and Xiao Qing, and said she, who, and said, and it was a pity that both of them were scheming. It was a waste of such a good show under the moonlight. Until now, she still couldn't figure out what was going on. This should be Commandery Prince Qing. Although she was far away from him yesterday, she still saw him. Although she didn't recognize him at once, after thinking for a while, she immediately knew that the person in front of her was the new Commandery Prince Qing, who was not a good person. Xiao Yanru wanted to hook up with Commandery Prince Qing? It was not Xiao Yanru's intention to hook up with Prince Zhou and Prince Yu, but to hook up with this powerless Commandery Prince Qing, who didn't seem to have a good future. Then it was a chance encounter. However, this chance encounter and Xiao Yanru's meticulous dressing made it a little unreasonable. She glanced at Xiao Yanru's black clothes, which were similar to hers, and finally fell on the white jade hairpin on her beautiful hair. It actually looked a little similar to the white jade hairpin on her head. She narrowed her eyes slightly and thought, "It seems to be a little interesting." "Miss, when did the first miss change her hairpin?" Yujia also noticed Xiao Yanru's hairpin at this time and asked in surprise. She should have changed it when she went back with Shuqi just now. Xiao Wanru lifted the corner of her mouth and said with a sarcastic smile. Later, when they went out, Xiao Yanru said that she had sprained her ankle and they went into the forest separately, so she didn't notice that the hairpin on her head had been changed. "The first miss is dressed like you today, and even her hairpin is the same as yours. Could it be that she is also making an appointment with this child in your identity?" Yu Jie patted the surface of the stream hard and said angrily. The two little fishes swimming happily in the stream were startled and swam away in a panic. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Was she pretending that she had the same pulse as Commandery Prince Qing? Pulse? What he meant was that if that was the case, he should go out now and destroy her thoughts. However, she inexplicably felt that it was not so simple. Xiao Yanru was not a shallow person. How could she expose her plan so easily? Let's wait and see. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said unhurriedly. She was not in a hurry. She wanted to see it to the end instead of showing up to continue the show. Our miss is the miss of Duke Xing's mansion, and this tea set is not important to her. Child, please don't stand on ceremony. Hearing Chu Qing's words, Shu Qi, who was in the pavilion, immediately raised her head and said proudly. The name of Duke Xing's mansion also represented power in the capital city. It turns out that you are the miss of Duke Xing's mansion. I'm sorry for my rudeness. If I have a chance next time, I will definitely thank you, Miss Xiao. Chu Qing put the teacup in his hand in the hand of the servant behind him and bowed deeply to Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru hurriedly got up to avoid it and then bowed sideways to return the bow. Your Highness, you are... Shu Qi said in surprise with her eyes wide open. For a moment, she seemed to be so shocked that she couldn't even speak. As a maid, it was normal for her to make a fuss when she was shocked. However, she immediately came to her senses, restrained herself from losing her composure just now, and bowed deeply to Chu Qing like Xiao Yanru. As the personal maid of a miss from an aristocratic family, her reaction was natural and appropriate. Her master was likable, and her maid was also very polite and intelligent. Miss Xiao, I won't disturb you from enjoying the scenery. I've used this cup, so I won't be impolite and return it to you. I will definitely give you a new one someday. Chu Qing said gently with a smile on his face. After saying that, he swung his wide sleeves, turned around and strode away. Seeing him leave like this, Xiao Yanru's eyes flickered slightly. Until now, she still hadn't figured out why Chu Qing appeared in front of her. Instead of appearing in front of Xiao Wanru, he glanced around and found no trace of Xiao Wanru, so he became more and more confused. However, she didn't show it on her face and suddenly asked, Your Highness, can you ask me if you have seen a girl who looks and dresses like me? As soon as she spoke, she didn't inquire about the identity of this so-called prince, but only cared about another girl. If people knew that she was asking about her fifth sister, they would definitely think that she was really a good elder sister who would care about her younger sister under any circumstances. Oh, I wonder who you are looking for, Miss Xiao? Chu Qing turned around and asked with a smile. She is also my sister. I wonder if you have seen her when you came here? Xiao Yanru asked softly with a slight frown. Her eyes were also very beautiful. Coupled with her beautiful frown, she looked more pitiful. However, even though her face was covered with a veil now, it didn't affect her gentleness. It was hard for a man to resist her, especially when the man had implicitly expressed his affection for her just now. It was a kind of polite affection. I didn't see her. Did she get lost? Do you need my help to find her? Chu Qing showed some concern on his face, and his concern was just right, which could make people feel good about him. Xiao Wanru looked over from a distance and had to sigh with emotion. The couple was really well matched. It seemed that they had some affection for each other. Although they were far away from each other and had two servants by their side, which seemed to be very polite, it inexplicably made people feel that there was affection between them. Thank you, Your Highness. If you see her, please ask her to come here. I'll wait for her here. Xiao Yanru bowed sideways again. Okay. Chu Qing agreed readily. After looking at Xiao Yanru again, he turned around and left with his servant. In the end, he didn't tell her which prince he was. Although there were not many princes in the capital city and they were all members of the royal family, this prince was different from that one. Judging from his age, no one would guess that he was Prince Cheng, and of course, no one would guess that he was the sick Prince Chen. Sometimes it was better to call himself Prince than to directly say his surname. Both Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were much more noble than him now. One of them wanted to say something, while the other pretended to say something. They were a good match. Seeing that Commandery Prince Qing was also coming over, Xiao Wanru pulled Yujie to hide in the shadow of the stone. It seemed that he was coming in her direction. Could it be that he was instigated by Xiao Yanru to come to find her? Although Xiao Wanru felt that it was not easy for this person to be fooled by Xiao Yanru, she didn't want to see him at this time in order to prevent him from taking advantage of the situation. Fortunately, there was a big stone here, which blocked the two of them. Seeing Chu Qing leave from the big stone beside them in a hurry, Xiao Wanru and Yujie poked their heads out and looked at the pavilion in the distance. Shuqi was cleaning up the stone table, and it seemed that she was going to continue to go inside. Xiao Yanru came out of the pavilion smoothly and didn't look like she had difficulty walking with Shuqi's help at all. Sure enough, she just pretended to be in front of her. She played this trick because she wanted to take two paths with her. The scenery was beautiful. It seemed that there were a lot of scenery along the way today. After Chu Qing left, Xiao Wanru and Yujie turned around and walked back to the previous path and continued to walk forward. If they guessed correctly, Commandery Prince Qing was now walking in front of them. Chapter 579. There were tall trees, winding paths, and beautiful maple leaves falling slowly from the trees like flowers. The scenery in front of her was extremely beautiful. Even though Xiao Wanru was full of thoughts, she had to admire that this maple forest was not worse than the garden with thousands of flowers in spring. It was even more amazing in some aspects. The path was winding and they walked slowly. In the quiet forest, they suddenly heard the noise coming from behind them. Then they saw two old maids appear in front of them. In their sight, one was chasing and the other was running. The one behind seemed to be holding something in her hand and was going to throw it at the old maid in front. The old maid in front was very flexible. She took a turn from time to time instead of running in a straight line. Even if the old maid behind threw something, it was unlikely to hit her. Yujie pulled Xiao Wanru back to the side of the road. The path was not big. It was easy for them to bump into Xiao Wanru when they ran over like this. Looking at the two old maids who bumped into her, Xiao Wanru took Yujie back a few steps and simply stepped out of the path to make way for the two old maids approaching them. She looked coldly at the two old maids approaching them. Yujie stood in front of Xiao Wanru and stared at the two old maids vigilantly. The old maid running in front finally ran to the front of them. She looked back while running, as if she didn't notice that there were people in front of her at all. She also didn't notice that she had run out of the path in a few steps and went straight to Yujie. Yujie staggered a few steps and almost fell down. She had been standing in front of Xiao Wanru and moved aside to make way for Xiao Wanru, who was standing behind her. Seeing the old maid in front of her throw herself at Yujie and take her away, the old maid behind her was overjoyed. She cursed behind Yujie and threw the thing in her hand out. Xiao Wanru had known that something was wrong when Yujie staggered out. She kicked the tree trunk beside her, covered her head with her hands, fell to the side and fell heavily to the ground. The sharp pain under her body made her groan involuntarily, and then she heard a rustling sound. Her leg was hit by something and felt a little hot. Fortunately, it was autumn, and the dress she was wearing was not the kind of thin one in summer. Seeing Xiao Wanru fall to the ground, Yujie kicked the old maid standing in front of her to the ground like crazy. Then she slapped the old maid who was still holding her to the ground and shouted anxiously, "Miss, miss." She turned around and helped Xiao Wanru up, while reaching out to pat off some debris on her body. As soon as she patted it, she cried out in pain. "What is this?" Xiao Wanru stood still with the support of the tree trunk and looked coldly at the two old maids who fell in a mess. There were still some black things on the hem of her black robe and the ground where she had stood before. Yujie's hand had just patted these things on the black robe for her and was burned. It could be seen that these things were hot. Just now, the old maid had thrown them at her face. The veil on her face couldn't block them at all. There were so many fine things. No matter how many of them hit her face, the place where they hit would inevitably be injured. "Miss, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit this bitch, not to hit you. These are the sand at the bottom of the fried melon seeds. I'm afraid that the fried melon seeds will be damaged." The old maid said as she tried to get up, but found that she couldn't get up for a while. The place where she had been kicked by Yu Jie just now hurt. She had thought of running away as soon as she got up. Anyway, there was no one here, but now she found that she couldn't run away at all. Miss, it was this old bitch who did it. It has nothing to do with me. I just ran away when I saw that she had such a strong killing intent. I didn't expect that this old bitch would dare to do such a thing. The other old maid shook her hands and hurriedly explained while trying to get up and run away. She was slapped to the ground by Yu Jie. Her face was in pain, but her legs and feet were fine. She rolled her eyes and wanted to run away. She also made up her mind. There was only a miss and a servant girl here. Although this servant girl seemed to be more powerful, she didn't dare to leave her master here and chase after her. However, as soon as she got up, she sadly found that her clothes were stepped on by a foot. Looking up at Yu Jie, who was almost crazy with anger, she couldn't help trembling in fear. Needless to say, misses from big families were all delicate and noble, and they were not worse than misses from small families. How could this servant girl be so powerful? Not only did she react quickly, but she also had great strength. Even if they wanted to run away, they couldn't. The old maid pulled hard at the corner of her clothes that was stepped on, but she found that she couldn't pull it at all. This seemingly small servant girl was actually stronger than her, a rough old maid, and she stepped there steadily. Break her feet and see how she can run away. Xiao Wanru said coldly with a trace of malice flashing in her eyes. Yes, miss. Yu Jie raised her foot and kicked hard at the leg of the old maid who was pulling the corner of her clothes. Ah! The shrill scream spread far away, which scared the other old maid so much that her face turned as pale as the one who was stepped on. Shouldn't she ask clearly at this time? Why did she ask the servant girl to kill her without saying anything? Tell me what's going on? Xiao Wanru glanced at the two old maids and said coldly, Miss, please spare our lives. Miss, please spare our lives. We really didn't do it on purpose. I borrowed a pot to fry melon seeds in the nunnery, but this bitch came to make trouble and ruined all the melon seeds in my pot. I was so angry that I grabbed a handful of sand with a handkerchief and chased her out. Miss, I really didn't do it on purpose. Please be magnanimous and spare me. The old maid who had smashed the hot sand was the first to react. She moved her body a little, knelt down and kowtowed to Xiao Wanru with tears all over her face. No one knew whether it was because of fear or pain. Miss, please spare our lives. I was just angry that this bitch deliberately hurt my grandson, so I deliberately disturbed her. She chased me so I ran away. I didn't expect to meet this miss, and I didn't expect that she would grab the hot sand used to fry melon seeds and throw it at me. Miss, I'm really wronged. I don't know anything. The other old maid also reacted at this time. She covered her injured leg, knelt down, and also kowtowed to Xiao Wanru. Miss, please spare our lives. Miss, please spare our lives. The two old maids cried and begged for mercy. They looked extremely pitiful and half knelt down. At first glance, it could be seen that they were in a bad situation. The shrill and miserable scream just now sounded in the quiet forest and alarmed many people who were enjoying the scenery. Those who were far away didn't know the direction, but those who were near could tell that it was in this direction. Someone sped up and came here. Miss? Shuqi also heard it. They were not far away from Xiao Wanru, so such a shrill scream was still very clear. Xiao Yanru listened carefully and showed a trace of complacency on her face. Could it be that Xiao Wanru had fallen into the trap? Otherwise, how could she let out such a miserable scream in pain? Let's go and have a look. She turned around, took Shuqi in another direction, and went across the maple forest. No matter how badly she was injured, it would be good if she could be injured. Even if her injury was not the most serious, there was still the ointment for burns. She had used it before and let Xiao Wanru see that there was no scar on her hand after she recovered. After going back, she would let Xiao Wanru use it. Her face made people angry just by looking at it. It was better to destroy it. Send her to the official office. Ask someone to find out whether someone set up this trap to hurt me. I heard that the officials of the Ministry of Justice are still here. Send her directly to the Ministry of Justice later. Xiao Wanru said coldly. Yu Jie stepped back to support her. The Ministry of Justice was different from the ordinary yamen. It always made people feel that it was difficult to get out after entering it. If something happened to the people in the capital city, they usually reported it to the capital governor instead of the Ministry of Justice. At least the capital governor was not as strict as the Ministry of Justice. Seeing Xiao Wanru's cold and somewhat hostile eyes, the two old maids really panicked. They could have escaped, but now not only could they not escape, but they would also be sent to the Ministry of Justice. It seemed that this miss was not willing to give up. The two old maids looked at each other and saw real fear in each other's eyes for the first time. Both of them were rough old maids from the countryside, who were hired by someone. They had seen Shuqi before. Shuqi said that Xiao Wanru had been bullying her elder sister, disrespecting her elder sister, and snatching her elder sister's yard. She had hired the two old maids to deal with Xiao Wanru. Of course, she had given them a lot of silver in private. When they were on the mountain, they didn't use them. At that time, they wanted to rush down suddenly when Xiao Wanru climbed up and pushed Xiao Wanru and her servant girl down the mountain by the narrow path. They just needed to report that they slipped and fell down the mountain. This time, they used the hot sand used for stir-frying melon seeds in order to ruin Xiao Wanru's face. The two old maids were uneducated and rough, so they didn't think it was a big deal. Anyway, they would run away after that. There was no one else in the forest, so no one would know who they were. Unexpectedly, Yu Jie was so fierce that she directly knocked them down to the ground. Then Xiao Wanru gave a cruel order and now asked the Ministry of Justice to charge them with intentional injury. If they were really sent to the Ministry of Justice, it would be difficult for them to get out. In a panic, the two of them knelt down and pleaded with Xiao Wanru, kowtowing as they begged. "Miss, we really didn't do it on purpose. Miss, we won't dare to do it again. Please forgive us, miss." Xiao Wanru looked at the two old maids coldly. Seeing that their foreheads were red and broken, they still didn't let go and didn't say anything. This place was not far from Xiao Yanru's place. Xiao Yanru should be arriving soon. Today, Xiao Yanru had set her up one after another. She would see how she would act next. "Miss, it's not too much to kill them. Since it's a misunderstanding and they are behaving like this, let them go." A gentle voice came, causing Xiao Wanru and Yu Jie to look up together. Chapter 580. Under the veil, Xiao Wanru showed a slight sneer at the corners of her mouth. Commandery Prince Qing showed up. This should be within Xiao Yanru's expectation. Sure enough, compared with Qin Yuru, Xiao Yanru was the most insidious viper. Unfortunately, Xiao Yanru still didn't understand her character and took it for granted. Not only did Chu Qing appear on the path, there were also other people. Although there weren't many of them, there were only 5 or 6 of them. From the looks of it, they were brothers and sisters of a certain family who had come to enjoy the scenery together. Chu Qing walked in front of the group of people. Their voices were not soft, and in this quiet forest, it was easy to hear their words clearly. "Miss, it's very nice to meet you." Chu Qing came over, smiled at Xiao Wanru, bowed politely, and looked at Xiao Wanru's beautiful eyes, which were exposed outside the veil. Even with a little anger and coldness, her eyes were still astonishingly beautiful. Just a glance could make people feel attracted, but no matter how attracted they were just a beauty in Chu Qing's eyes. Although it was difficult to find a beautiful woman in the world, it was not impossible to find one. It was not difficult to find one. When he became powerful, he could have all kinds of beauties he wanted. Even Xiao Yanru, the first beauty in the capital city, didn't matter. In his eyes, beauties were nothing, not to mention this kind of charming beauty. Although men were attracted by her, he preferred elegant ones. Chu Qing felt that although the eyes of the 5th Miss Xiao were a little less beautiful than that of the 1st Miss Xiao, they were a little more pure and upright, which was exactly the type he liked. Even though all the men in the world thought that the 5th Miss Xiao in front of him was beautiful, none of them liked him. "Child, what can I do for you?" Yu Jie took 2 steps forward and said with a cold look. She looked at Chu Qing with the same vigilance. "Since these 2 old maids were an accident, and you were not hurt, let's forget about it. Look at them, they got their retribution. They should have hurt their legs. Chu Qing said gently. Seeing the two old maids kneeling unnaturally and dragging one of their legs, he thought that the two old maids had fallen and hurt their legs. His words were very gentle and had the intention to keep the peace. The few people who followed behind him to watch the show nodded their heads in agreement. In the current situation, the two old maids were in a sorry state. Not only were they embarrassed, but they also looked pitiful. Compared with Xiao Wanru, who was unscathed, the situation of the two old maids was really pitiful. Xiao Wanru pulled Yujie, who still wanted to defend herself, raised her eyes to look at Chu Qing and said coldly, "Child, do you mean that only if my face is disfigured by them will I be considered to be in trouble?" In her last life, she had never dealt with Commandery Prince Qing, so she didn't know his character. But now she clearly realized that Commandery Prince Qing's ambition had been taken advantage of by Xiao Yenru. Chu Qing, who had just become Commandery Prince Qing, was in urgent need of a good reputation. Now that there was such an opportunity, he certainly would not let it go. It seemed that he was determined to meddle in this matter. Xiao Wanru's words were extremely sharp, and Chu Qing showed a little embarrassment on his handsome face. But looking at the miserable appearance of the two old maids, he still couldn't bear to say, "Since the two old maids are in such a state now, miss, you'd better let them go. This is a quiet place of Buddhism, and Buddhism values charity the most. It seems that miss is also a kind person, so you won't be too aggressive. Even if a person of Buddhism kills someone, shouldn't he be forgiven? Lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha immediately, regardless of the fact that he has killed millions of people before? Then why did the Ministry of Justice come to the Yuhui nunnery before? Since killing someone in front of Buddhism is not a big deal and should be forgiven, why did the Ministry of Justice come to the Yuhui nunnery?" Xiao Wanru's eyes became colder and colder, and she directly combined it with the fact that the Ministry of Justice came to the Yuhui nunnery to investigate the case. And these things were vaguely related to Chu Qing. "What, it's different? Miss, you didn't get hurt." Chu Qing was annoyed in his heart, but he couldn't show it on his face. He smiled slightly and looked more and more calm. "If one day you are assassinated but not killed, will you spare them and let the assassins go back?" Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Qing with a faint smile and asked. If she asked someone else this question, others would definitely not think anything of it. No assassin would come to assassinate an ordinary person for no reason, but Chu Qing was not an ordinary person. Since he was ambitious, his future path was destined to be unusual. Or it could be said that since he walked out of the Yuhui nunnery and came to the public, he was destined not to take an ordinary path. It was inevitable that he would be assassinated. If he said that he would not pursue it now, it would be troublesome if his opponent used what he said to deal with him if it really happened in the future. Just as Xiao Yenru was sure that Chu Qing would draw his sword to help when he saw injustice, when he encountered such a thing, Xiao Wanru was also sure that Chu Qing did not dare to say such a thing. Sure enough, Chu Qing coughed in a low voice. When he was about to bypass this sentence and explain from another aspect, he heard Xiao Wanru snatch the words back. "Child, do you also think this kind of thing is unforgivable? Of course, what you encounter is different from what others encounter. Don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. I hope you don't apply these two standards to yourself and others," Xiao Wanru said coldly and rudely. Chu Qing's face turned red with a trace of shame and annoyance. He didn't expect that the first Miss Xiao in front of him was so sharp-tongued. He couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. She said that she had a good reputation. From what she said, he knew that she was not a good person. Sure enough, rumors could not be trusted. "Let's go back and ask the people of the Ministry of Justice to take them away." Xiao Wanru turned to Yujie and seemed to be about to leave. The two old maids were injured. Even if they wanted to escape, they couldn't escape much in a short time. Moreover, they had to return to the maple leaf forest in the end. There was no way down the mountain. The way up the mountain and down the mountain from the Yuhui nunnery was the same. There was only one way in front of the nunnery. Otherwise, Mo Chui would not have begged Great Elder Princess to take her, good fellow, down the mountain. What's going on?" Xiao Yenru, who had been hiding behind the tree for a long time, couldn't hide anymore. Although she couldn't be implicated by these two old maids, it would be disadvantageous to her if Shuqi was involved. It was not the time for her to change her servant girl for the time being. Seeing Xiao Yanru appear behind the tree, Chu Qing inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He couldn't help showing a smile on his face and bowing deeply to Xiao Yanru, who walked over gracefully. "Miss Xiao." Several other onlookers looked at Xiao Yanru, who was walking over, and then looked at Xiao Wanru, who was dressed almost the same. They all fell silent. It seemed that the two of them had something to do with each other. They were dressed almost the same. If the miss in front of them hadn't dropped her white jade hairpin on the ground, they would have looked exactly the same. Someone looked at the ground and found that the white jade hairpin on the ground had been broken into two pieces. However, neither the master nor the servant girl seemed to have noticed that the master had stepped on the jade hairpin. In the current situation, naturally, no one would remind Xiao Wanru of such a trivial matter. The jade hairpin was broken. Fortunately, the bun inside was tied tightly, so her beautiful hair didn't fall. Xiao Yanru smiled at Chu Qing and bowed sideways. Compared with Xiao Wanru, who stood there with a bit of arrogance, Xiao Yanru's words and deeds were gentle and dignified, which was very easy to leave a good impression on others. "Sister, what's wrong?" After bowing, Xiao Yanru turned to the two old maids kneeling on the ground, and then looked at Xiao Wanru with a frown and asked softly. "First, miss, these two old maids deliberately tried to ruin my miss's appearance by throwing hot sand on her face. If we hadn't dodged in time, our faces would have been ruined. However, these two old maids deliberately said that there was a dispute between them. They quarreled and accidentally hit my miss's face. Look at their positions. How could it be possible for them to hit my miss's face? It's obvious that they did it on purpose." Yujia said confidently and reached out to point at the place where the two old maids were kneeling. The two old maids were kneeling in a row now. Indeed, it didn't seem that they quarreled and hit Xiao Wanru's face by mistake. The onlookers also became confused and thought that Yujia's words were really reasonable. Could it be that the two old maids really had an ulterior motive? Looking at Xiao Wanru's beautiful watery eyes, which were covered by a veil, they all had an idea. Could it be that someone was jealous of her face and did it on purpose? If so, it must be an acquaintance. However, in this place, Xiao Yanru seemed to be the only acquaintance here. Xiao Yanru sensitively found that everyone was looking at her and couldn't help feeling resentful in her heart. She didn't expect that a casual maid of Xiao Wanru could be so eloquent and attract everyone's attention with just a few words. However, she didn't point it out, so she couldn't defend herself even if she wanted to. "Fifth sister, since there is such a thing, send them to the capital governor. This kind of thing is in charge of the capital governor. The Ministry of Justice has its own murder cases to deal with," Xiao Yanru said softly. Her words sounded very fair. The two old maids looked at each other, secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and looked at Xiao Yanru gratefully, thinking that this first miss was really kind. Shuqi had repeatedly said that if something really happened to them, she would definitely ask her miss to save them. The people of the Ministry of Justice are close by. Big sister, why do you ask the capital governor to handle it? Is it the most convenient for you to go down the mountain to ask someone and come back? Xiao Wanru asked in confusion. "It doesn't matter. I can send someone down the mountain. It's not troublesome," Xiao Yanru said softly, as if Xiao Wanru just said that she directly went to the unreasonable Ministry of Justice because she was afraid of trouble. After all, this kind of thing was a trivial matter. No one was killed or injured, so it was just a suspicion. "Big sister, I'm not afraid of trouble. I just think it's better to ask the Ministry of Justice to investigate this kind of thing. If something happens to us on the mountain, the Ministry of Justice has to investigate it even if it doesn't want to. If you think it's unreasonable, you can ask the people of the Ministry of Justice to inquire about it first and see whether we should report it to them or to the capital governor. Let the officials of the Ministry of Justice have the final say, okay?" Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. With Qiu Yu around, anything related to Xiao Yanru was a big deal. This matter had to be left in the Ministry of Justice. Of course, with Qiu Yu around, this matter could be simplified. Xiao Yanru couldn't keep a distance from Qiuyu even if she wanted to. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.